Well, that's that Friday night feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clash over economic policies to tackle the Bank of England's warning over a year of recession.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Friday the 5th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK, we're on your TV and your radio, so wherever you are and whatever you're up to, you can take us out and about with you.
Yep, here's what you are waking up to this morning.
Sitting here, or standing here, promising you tens and tens of billions of pounds of goodies straight away, because I don't think that's the right thing to do for our economy. I think it's risky. I think it risks making the inflation problem far worse and costing you all far more.
In the Tory leadership campaign, Mr Sunak, who's trailed Liz Truss in recent polls, repeatedly said he would prioritise bringing down inflation before cutting taxes if he became Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Liz Truss has pledged a package of tax cuts worth £30 billion soon after she enters office.
Immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment.
Well, the Bank of England has warned that the UK is set to fall into the longest recession since the 2008 financial crisis. This follows the announcement that interest rates will rise 0.5% to 1.75%, the biggest hike for 27 years.
Well, our national reporter Paul Hawkins is going to join us after 7 this morning to look at just how it could affect small businesses.
And as a hosepipe ban comes into force for Southern Water customers in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, we're asking you this morning, would you grass on your neighbours if you caught them watering the garden?
£1,000 fine if you get caught, apparently. So there you go. Let us know what you would do then. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Well, the UK is facing its longest recession, apparently, and the Conservative leadership hopefuls Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed over economic policies to tackle the forecasted downturn.
Well, Ms Truss and Mr Sunak took part in Sky News' The Battle for Number 10 on Thursday night, which saw them separately taking questions from party members.
The Foreign Secretary argued that recession could be avoided using tax cuts and reversing national insurance increases. Meanwhile, the former Chancellor warned that Liz Truss's plan would make the dire economic situation worse. Let's have a look at some of the highlights.
I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
I'm worried that Liz Truss's plans will make the situation worse. And what I want to do is different. I think the government's #1 priority should be grappling with inflation. That's what I want to do. But it all starts with not making the situation worse. Because if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us, all of you, are going to just end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions. I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am so focused on gripping inflation first.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Albie Amankona. He's political commentator and the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Good morning to you, Albie. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what was your reaction to that Sky debate last night?
I thought it was a very interesting debate. It seemed to be a good night for Rishi Sunak based upon the audience, because, of course, if you watched the debate, they had some technical issues when it came to them voting for who they thought was going to be the best leader, and then catered it with a simple show of hands. And I think Rishi really took the room, which is in opposition to the polls that we've been seeing at the moment. We've been seeing some polls of Rishi 10, 20, 30 points ahead of Liz Truss. So I was quite surprised to see that result. It was quite a small group of people, I think around 100, 150, whereas the pollsters are polling much larger groups of people. So I'm not sure if it's the turnaround that Rishi needs in order to win this contest. It's
interesting, though. I mean, obviously, the economy is the big issue, and they're approaching it from two very different angles, so it would seem. Yet the economists can't necessarily agree which one is right either.
No, they can't, and that's a very common feature among economists. The economy is in a very dire situation. And I'm actually glad that finally the leaders are being honest about that, because they have to be. The Bank of England has raised interest rates. It is looking like, more likely than not, we're going to have a recession next year, 5 quarters of no growth, of a retracting economy. And what the leadership contenders need to do now is really grapple with the crises that are in our economy, of productivity, of housing, of goods, of labour. And I'm yet to hear any policies that really tackle those supply issues in a meaningful way.
I mean, Rishi Sunak has the economic expertise, obviously the role that he's been doing for the past couple of years. Is this his time to shine now that we have this news from the Bank of England?
It should be his time to shine, but the problem is that he has been connected to the economic disasters of the past 2 years. And to be fair to him, both of them have been out of his control. The COVID crisis was not something he really could have controlled in a meaningful way. The war in Ukraine, which has caused a lot of supply-side issues, is not something he could have controlled in a meaningful way, and he's been reacting to those issues. So Liz Truss seems to have an advantage, because she's saying, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do things differently.
Is his credibility as using, sort of former Chancellor role, is that damaged by the fact that Sajid Javid, who was his old boss when he was Chancellor, has come out and supported Liz Truss and said, Rishi's plans are going to lead to a stagnant economy?
Yes, I think if we look at most of the people that used to work with Rishi in the Treasury, Simon Clarke, Sajid Javid, have actually come out in favour of Liz Truss. So that does damage him to some extent, and he is very much sticking to his original position that now is not the time to be cutting taxes. We need to be focusing on tackling inflation, and then we'll bring down taxes later on, but that doesn't seem to be very popular with the membership.
I just wondered, do you think he believes that? Or has he... I mean, it would be far too big a U-turn. If he changed his position on that, then he's out the race, entirely out the race. So do you think he actually believes what he's saying?
It would have been much easier for Rishi Sunak to come out from the beginning and say that he was going to cut taxes. That would have been the easier political decision to do, because everyone would have known that would have been popular with the membership. So I would ask, why would he risk losing the leadership election on something he didn't believe in if he didn't really believe in it?
When you talk about growth, I mean, obviously we need growth, and the recession is a gloomy picture. Should it come to pass? I mean, whether it would work or not, I don't know. But what Liz Truss is pushing for with tax cuts is to stimulate growth. I mean, that is her plan. His plan is to deal with inflation. Her plan is to stimulate growth.
Yes, but the argument is that the recession is being caused because of a lack of supply, because of inflation. And so the argument would be what we need to do in order to reform the economy is increase supply of goods, of energy, of housing, of labour, in order for the economy to get growing. That is a very fairly understood political economic argument, and that is really what the leadership contenders need to be focusing on. As I said before, we're not really hearing any serious supply-side reforms from either of the candidates.
Albie, we usually see a honeymoon period, don't we, with new leaders? They have a few months where people are saying, give him or her a chance. Do you... well, clearly, we're walking into a minefield, whoever this next leader is, with housing, with cost of living crisis, with the economy. Is it going to be a much shorter honeymoon period? Will there even be one at all, do you think?
There might not be a honeymoon period at all, Ellie. We are heading for increases in energy bills come this autumn. We might see interest rates increase again next year. We're going to see 5 quarters of recession until January 2024, we could be in recession. I'm not really sure there's much space for a honeymoon period. The next Prime Minister needs to get down to the nitty-gritty of sorting out the issues with Britain's economy. And there are going to be some difficult decisions to make.
Do you think with all of this, and despite the fact Rishi sort of won over the majority of the studio audience last night, is it going to make any difference? He's, if we believe the polls, trailing 30-plus points behind Liz Truss. He can't make that back, can he?
I think it is difficult to see how Rishi Sunak's team and himself could close such a large gap with Liz Truss. I think what he needs to be doing is focusing on making his arguments and making them well, in the hope that perhaps some of the people that end up in Liz Truss's cabinet might be echoing similar sentiments to her when she is the Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, on the basis that he won't be in the cabinet, I presume.
Well, we don't know who is going to be in the cabinet. They have both said that they would have each other in each other's cabinet, so we have to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, interesting. Albie, good to talk to you as always. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, what do you make of it all? So that's the interesting point. That's what matters. Let's head to Cheshire and talk to one of our viewers and listeners, Gray Smith. Morning to you, Gray. Really good to see you this morning. So, what do you think of all this? Have you made up your mind? Is your mind being changed at all?
Yes. Up until last night, I was dubious about who I was going to vote for. But Rishi made some very strong points, and his stance on the economic position is clearly the right one. So right now, I'm going to be voting for Rishi. Unfortunately, when we talk about Liz's policies on economics, she wants to do everything that recent history shows causes increased inflation and basically damages the economy, which is like cutting interest rates, spend more money borrowing, which she will have to do if she reduces taxes, and tax cuts. So I think he has his finger on the pulse, and the big picture is not what we think of the man. I mean, it was quite clear last night that the presenter of the program was visually surprised at the response of the voters, the members who voted, because majority, at least 2/3 of them, were in favour of Rishi. So I think we can basically ignore the polls and know that Rishi has his finger on the pulse and knows what he's doing.
Good morning to you, Gray. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you think it is the state of the economy, that announcement from the Bank of England yesterday, that perhaps led to Rishi doing so well last night? Like you said, 2/3 of the audience raised their hand when they said that that is who they would vote for. They would vote for Rishi Sunak. Do you think people now feel perhaps more confident in Rishi Sunak because of his economic expertise?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, what affects voters and people in the public like myself and you is what happens to the money in your pocket. And if the wrong policies are applied and things escalate out of control, then, mortgage rates will go up 54%, or roughly 54% of the British population live in debt using credit cards and the like. That will cost a lot more, and it's going to hurt us in the pocket. So it is a very important point. I would like to just make a comparison. Prior to the crunch, the cost of living crunch with the green energy nonsense that went on, sorry, I call it nonsense, everybody was in favour of it. And were all waving their flags in support of it. But the minute the energy costs, which is the consequence of that policy, rose to affect the pockets of the people, everybody's turned around, and the general consensus now is get rid of all the surcharges and at least put it on hold to stop the damage it's doing to the economy.
I mean, the problem you've got, Gray, in all of this, and you can see where a lot of people are coming from, is that whereas Rishi's policies may be, in your view, more sound, what people need is money in the pocket. And they haven't got it at the moment. And things like Liz Truss saying, well, we'll reduce some taxes, we'll put a moratorium on the green levy on fuel. I mean, things that are actually going to make an immediate difference to people and immediately improve their quality of lives. You can see why that's an appeal.
Absolutely, yes. But think of it like an individual. If you're sitting at home and your budget has got out of control and you're in debt, the worst thing you want to do is borrow more money and put it on the credit card, which is in the long term going to hurt you much more than bite the bullet, budget properly, get through this inflationary period, which is what Rishi Sunak has said he'll do. He wants to keep taxes where they are. He wants interest rates rises so that inflation is stemmed, and then he will cut taxes and everything will become a lot better for everybody, little people like me and everybody else out here, and the business people.
Gray, I did want to ask you about Taiwan quickly. We are running out of time, but my understanding is you run a small business which imports from Taiwan. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
So how are you feeling after seeing Nancy Pelosi's visit this week? The third most politically powerful person in the US, obviously heading to Taiwan, seems to have increased tensions between China and Taiwan. Is this something that you worry about? And, of course, the impact on your business?
Well, from a global point of view, seriously worried about it. I have an interest in a factory there, and all the people that I speak to at director level and just generally, they you must remember they all come from China. When Shanghai Shek left China in 50 or 49 or whenever it was, they all have relatives in China. So the people actually living there, by and large, don't have a problem with China. They wanted to escape the communistic regime that existed back then. That's over 50 years ago. Things are changing, and the general message that I get from them is that everybody will be happy to reunite with China, which is completely mad in terms of what we hear from Pelosi and the like, and everything will go back to normal. I think that visit was inflammatory, and it's stoking tensions, and it's not a good thing. Much like the war in Ukraine against Russia. I don't understand why the world leaders have got such problems with Russia and with China, except for the fact that the Western world, America and Europe, have lost their footing in terms of economic dominance and manufacturing, and they want to now destabilize those areas so that they can try and get back. I just think that we should be focusing on, much like Rishi Sunak wants to do, and focus on our own economy, build it up, bring back manufacturing to the country so that we can thrive and on an economic and manufacturing level start to compete with them rather than any other way.
OK. Grace Smith, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, do let us know what you think of what Gray Smith was saying there. The issue of Taiwan and China, obviously going to be a big concern to lots of people. And the debate last night on Sky News between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Let us know who you thought came out well on that. GBviews at gbnews.uk, and we'll share as many as we can a little bit later on.
All of them. Can we go through everyone?
You do like a GBview, don't you?
Oh, I do like a GBview. More the merrier, I say.
I like it.
Let's bring up to date with what's going on today at 6:17. And the UK economy facing its longest recession since the financial crisis. The Bank of England warning that inflation is likely to hit 13%. They've also announced the biggest interest rate rise in nearly 3 decades, hiking it by half a percentage point to 1.75%. Mortgages and loans will be more expensive, but there will be a better return on savings if you get any interest on your savings at all, that is.
A decision on whether Archie Battersby can be moved from hospital to a hospice is expected at the High Court this morning. The 12-year-old's family have pledged to fight to the end so he can spend his final moments with dignity. Archie has been in a coma since April and has been the subject of a lengthy legal battle to continue his life support.
In Russia, a judge has sentenced a basketball player, Brittany Griner, to more than 9 years for drug smuggling and possession. The American was arrested earlier this year at Moscow airport with vape cartridges containing cannabis oil. US President Joe Biden described the jail term as unacceptable and called on Moscow to release her immediately.
The US has postponed the long-planned test of an intercontinental missile in the hope of diffusing escalating tensions with China. Beijing has launched a number of missiles into waters near Taiwan. That's in response to the US House Speaker's visit, saying that the US is playing with fire. Its government is staging the largest military exercise ever in the region.
Footfall in the UK stalled last month as record temperatures and the rising cost of living deterred people from heading to the shops. The British Retail Consortium says footfall fell by 14.2% compared with 3 years previously. It also says shopping centre visits were down 24.8% on the last 3 years. Go on.
I
You first, Ellie.
was going to say, do you want to talk shopping or do you want to talk Archie Battersby? Those are the two that I think are really important.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Well, Archie, I sort of think it's a bit difficult talking Archie.
Yeah, it is.
Because, you know, it's whatever happens, he's now coming to the end of his
know.
life, which is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's just how that happens now. It's
No.
just tragic all the way around.
No, there's no happy ending to that story, but I have spent the last 2 days at the hospital, and I think it's very, very hard for everyone involved. I think there's a lot of tension in that hospital between, obviously, the NHS Trust and the family, and the mother is, of course, finding this all very, very difficult. So our thoughts are, of course, with her.
Oh, yeah.
And there should be a decision later on today, and I believe I'm going to be the one bringing that to you after
yeah, you're
this.
heading
So
down
I
there
think I'm going to
after
head
this.
down there and do that after this. So
Awful
of course, we'll
situation.
bring that to you, but lots of you will have opinions on that one. And we're also talking about a hosepipe ban today. It's going to begin in the Isle of Wight and Hampshire, and the ban comes as the Met Office warns there's very little rain on the way in dry areas of England, and temperatures are set to climb again next week.
Now, the restrictions mean you won't be allowed to get my words out this morning, water gardens, wash your cars, or turn on any sprinklers. Other bans to come include Kent and Sussex on the 12th, and the Welsh region of Pembrokeshire and parts of Carmarthenshire on August the 19th.
Well, John Grant is a senior lecturer in sustainable construction and climate science at Sheffield Hallam University, and he joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I like your background. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in my garden.
Oh, well, thank you very much
which
for
is
stepping
great.
into your garden for us. It's nice to see some greenery this morning. So what do you make of this hosepipe ban then in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight? Do you think it's needed?
Well, unfortunately, yes. You know, we've had just an unprecedented dry period, which I fear is just the beginning of what we're going to be facing as climate shifts. And you know, the amount of leaks and the like that we've got in there, we're really not managing our water as well as we could. And even in our homes, you know, we're not pursuing a low consumption strategy that you know, as good as we could. I mean, I know people are doing their bit, but you know, we could do a lot better if those buildings were designed better.
Is it our fault, though, John, in all this? And you understand people's frustration when there's how many ever billions of litres of water are being lost through leakage on a daily basis. We haven't had any new reservoirs for 30 years. A desalination plant from Thames Water has just been mothballed. So it's like the companies aren't taking enough action, and then we get all the heat for it.
I think you're absolutely right. It's ridiculous that it's being displaced to people. But as always, the British people are being asked to pick up the baton and run with this. You know, I fear this might be an indicator of the privatisation that has been going on. You know, if a business is trying to make a profit, it will cut back on things that aren't obvious until here we are in an unprecedented drought where it then becomes obvious where they've been cutting corners, isn't it? You know, as well as all of these, you know, earlier in the year, weren't there a whole series of fines due to sewage being released into our rivers and poor management in that respect? So, yeah, they really get a D, I fear, in terms of their report card.
John, those caught using their hosepipe could be fined up to £1,000. Do you think that's fair or do you think that's extreme?
Well, you know, we're in this position now. I wish there was something we could go back in time with and fix those leaks and the like, but we can't. And so, you know, here I am in my garden. I haven't watered my garden at all this year. Yes, it's a bit dry on the top, but because I haven't also cut my garden, it's full of wildflowers and the plants themselves are fine. They've not dried out. So you can manage these things without a serious compromise. And, you know, I wash my car once a year if it needs it or not. So I, you know, don't use a great deal of water on my car either. So you can do it without too much compromise. I appreciate a lot of people put a huge amount of money in their gardens, and to watch those wither and die must be quite gut-wrenching. But, you know, here we are. We need better management, and we need better designed houses that can use a significantly less amount of water. You know, we flush somewhere between a quarter and a third of our water down our toilets, you know, as they come in. We could do better than that, you know, and there's a lot of houses that could be improved on that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it would be nice to be well led by our water companies, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. John, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. He's a man who knows his onions, is John Grant.
But imagine only washing your car once a year.
Whether it needs it or not.
Mine would be a disgrace.
Would it?
It's a disgrace after a couple of weeks. It is white, that's why.
I've got to say, I'm always a bit transfixed when we speak to John Grant, because there's a singer, an American singer called John Grant.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic. And
you get a bit confused.
I just always think it's going to be that John Grant pops up. They don't look that dissimilar. Which is even more scary.
Burst into song in his garden. That would be nice, wouldn't it? This time of the morning.
Any thoughts? You've got GB Views at gbnews.uk. We're going to go through those in a couple of minutes. But we've got, after the break, one of our reporters. Could he be on your doorstep this morning?
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most. And again, there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest,
and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
6:30, welcome back. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, drug-related deaths in England and Wales are the highest since records began. That's according to new figures.
Yeah, the data shows there were 4,859 deaths related to drug poisoning in 2021. Experts blaming COVID lockdowns for fueling an addiction crisis.
Well, joining us now is the drugs campaigner Stephen Crikand. Good morning to you, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Ellie. Thanks for having me on. It's Peter Crikand.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
We do apologise. That's wrong in the autocue for us. So, Peter, tell us what is happening here? Why are people turning to drugs? And what was it about the COVID lockdown that was fueling people's addiction?
Well, I think if we look at COVID, obviously people were stuck at home for long periods of time. You know, there's definitely been a rise in all drugs, including, alcohol consumption in lockdown. People stuck at home, having to try and manage working from home, busy lives. Myself and my wife, we've got 2 young children. And, as I say, people were certainly spending more time buying alcohol from supermarkets, and potentially people who use drugs illegal drugs were using slightly more of those during lockdown. And also people who use drugs problematically, a lot of drug and alcohol treatment services were either closed or trying to work in a different way, so people couldn't get that support or that help during that period. So yeah, tough times, and coming out of that, obviously having to adapt, and extra people coming into services without a mass uplift in the funding provided also provides its own challenges.
It's interesting then, because those who want, a reduction in the criminalisation of drugs like cocaine, for example, that diminishes their argument. And I think you're of that camp, aren't you? Doesn't it diminish your argument in that if people were turning more to drugs because of lockdown and more to alcohol as well, well, it doesn't matter whether they were legal or not. It still highlights how dangerous they can be.
Yes, and of course, all drugs come with dangers. When we talk about decriminalisation or potentially a further step in terms of regulation, I think we have to look at what's happened with the tobacco industry, with the alcohol industry. Prohibition for alcohol, over 100 years ago just didn't work. And, we have to learn that, we're not going to go out and advertise drugs like cocaine or heroin. We're talking about, a regulated medical supply for people who use drugs problematically, and also a tested supply. So at the moment, illicit drugs, one of the biggest dangers is that they are controlled by criminal gangs, and there's no regulation, there's no testing, people don't know what they're taking. So even somebody who you often see in the media or the news, the younger person who has been to a festival, who's took some ecstasy or MDMA for the first time and died, have the same dangers for that one-off use as somebody who's using problematically. And I think COVID actually highlights how we cannot solve this problem through, the continued policing and that side of drug policy. Despite international lockdowns, despite police in the UK still busting and arresting drug dealers through that time, drugs were still readily available in this country. So if we cannot stop drugs coming into this country or break down those criminal supply chains while there's an international ban on travel, I don't know how we could think that we can do it at any point.
So regulation. I suppose the argument then is that regulation would actually mean at least we know exactly what is going on. It takes pressure off the criminal justice system, removes the gang structure from all of this. But we also, along with that, we'd also need to educate more clearly about the dangers, wouldn't we?
Yeah, of course. I think that's something that's not looked at enough. There's a body of people that say education around drugs just doesn't work. We've obviously been through the era of just say no. That clearly didn't work. Drugs are here to stay. People are going to use drugs. It's like sex education. Sex education doesn't increase. Talking about sex in high schools does not increase teenage pregnancies, and proper harm reduction, drug information and testing and regulating drugs, I think would automatically, as you said there, Stephen, remove the criminal element from it. So therefore, actually, it may become something that teenagers and young people want to do less of, because sometimes, having been in that situation as a person who started taking drugs myself at a really young age and became really problematic for me, it was some of the mystery around it, some of the just say no as an inquisitive young person that I think led me to want to experiment.
That's interesting. Peter Crichton, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Opens it up for a whole debate, doesn't it? What do you think? It's very easy just to say, no, ban it all. I mean, I'm quite anti-drug, I have to be honest. But when you hear someone like Peter making those sort of arguments, decriminalise it, but then heavily regulate it, would that actually reduce the appeal and solve a lot of the sort of social issues linked with drug use? What do you think? GBViews at GBnews.uk.
OK, stay with us because we've got plenty more to come, including all of the headlines making the papers this morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
6:39, morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Yep, time to go through your papers now. Joining us this morning is Joanna Williams, author and academic, and James Budworth, author and journalist. Good morning to you both. Thank you for joining us. Joanna, let's start with you, shall we? Britain slides into crisis, front page of the Times.
As this is the front page of the Times, but to be honest, it's the front page of pretty much every single newspaper this morning. It's grim. I mean, we've been saying this for weeks now, months. It feels like we've got huge problems with ever spiralling inflation, and now they're talking 13%. I've read in one of the papers this morning up to even 17%. All at the same time, I mean, the big news is we're predicting recession now, 3 quarters of negative growth coming at the end of this year, beginning of next year. Real terms, income fall for households. People are suffering. People will be struggling. One thing that concerns me, I guess, is that we need to get away a little bit from the alarmism. I mean, that's not to say the alarmism is not justified. This is a major crisis that we're facing. But I think we need to start discussing some more practical solutions, really, as to how we're going to deal with this, not on an individual level of people turning down their thermostat a notch. I'm sure people won't be putting their heating on at all this year, many people. But how, as a country, we're actually going to be getting out of this.
Well, how do we tackle inflation at this part? I mean, I'm not sure quite what Rishi Sunak is saying that will tackle inflation. I mean, the argument being made that Liz Truss's plans will increase inflation. Jules in Andover got in touch. Morning, Jules. Says, excuse me for being thick, but I thought the reason for increasing interest rates in the past was to stop us from spending, which would then reduce inflation. How is it going to help in this situation if we're only spending on essentials?
No, absolutely. And a number of people have raised that point. I think it's a very, very good point indeed. Do you know, one thing that surprises me, I mean, before we even get on to what can we do about it, actually looking at the cause of this, in all the coverage and all the hundreds of column inches that have been poured onto this, surprisingly little analysis really of why we're in this situation as well. And one word really that I think is missing from this is a proper analysis of the impact lockdown had on the economy. If you shut down the global economy for 2 years and print money whilst doing it, it's kind of no surprise that you then have spiralling inflation off the back of that. And yet that seems to be missing from the analysis here. And it's kind of interesting to wonder why that might be the case.
Yeah, yesterday it was pointing the fingers towards Russia, wasn't it? But we were ignoring the fact that we were locked down for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, lockdown's definitely had an impact, but I would also say that this is more of a supply-driven inflationary spiral. So you've got, there's currently China is still locking down, pursuing this crazy zero COVID strategy, which means demand for goods in China from here is lower than it would be. And obviously we've got the war in Ukraine, which is driving energy prices up for everyone. So I mean, but I think where we do have control is we have the Tory candidates, for example, whoever becomes Prime Minister, we do have control over what we do tax. So whether it's income tax, whether it's national insurance, where the kind of burden falls for kind of taxing the country.
I wonder whether the tax, if tax cuts are aimed at the worst off, that surely wouldn't be overly inflationary, would it? Because it would be spending on essentials. It's just allowing people to get by.
I think, for example, the national insurance rise was a bad way to increase taxes because that tends to hit the poorer first. And Rishi Sunak is talking
what
about
the increase of the when you start paying it? Jason says, when Liz says she'll reverse the national insurance increase, does that include reversing the new increased earnings cap? If so, I gain nothing in reality.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a cap on national insurance increases for the very poorest, but it's still there's still the kind of squeezed middle, people who aren't well off, who are still being hit by that tax.
Yeah.
I think the other problem as well is that with inflation spiralling at the levels at which it's being predicted to some extent, any talk about 1% here, 1% there actually becomes irrelevant. I mean, Rishi Sunak, he cut 5% off, or was it 5p off the price of fuel not that long ago. But it made absolutely no difference whatsoever to the price that most people were paying at the petrol pumps.
No, it's not. It's just not enough, is it? I mean, I thought that at the time. Let's have a look at the Mirror, should we, James? The government's missing in action. This is what the Labour Party was pushing yesterday, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, we have to remember Boris Johnson is still officially the Prime Minister. They've been accused of being missing in action for taking their summer holidays on the day the Bank of England announces this rate increase and on the day the Bank of England forecast the biggest recession in 30 years. Now, I mean, on one hand, every August, when people tend to go on holiday, when ministers tend to go on holiday, every year, without fail, there is a call for them to come back from their holiday because of some crisis, big or small. But I think this year, there is actually merit to this because, as I said, the Bank of England's forecast the biggest recession for 30 years. Inflation is predicted to rise to 13% in October, perhaps 15% next year.
What difference would it make if they were here?
Because it feels like they're kind of asleep at the wheel, I think. It feels like...
It's optics rather than anything else. They're not out the loop, are they?
It's partly optics, but it also feels like government ministers should be doing everything they can to get on top of this crisis.
Well, I agree.
And it doesn't feel like they are when they're on holiday. I do agree. I think everyone needs a holiday at some point, but I think we're right in the midst of a crisis right now. Well, Boris Johnson's going to have a very long holiday in a few months' time, so can he not wait for his tenure to come to an end?
I agree there's a real disjuncture between the crisis that we're facing and the response from our leaders. But I actually think the Daily Mirror's got a real cheek in publishing this story because they did more than any other newspaper in the country to campaign to get Boris Johnson out of office. You can't spend months waging a war against the sitting Prime Minister who was voted in with a massive majority and then turn around and hold your hands up in horror when he's on holiday during the month of August. They wanted him gone. You know, they waged this war. They made sure he wasn't there. It's prompted this leadership election. True, there is now a vacuum at the top of the country when we're in desperate need of a bit of leadership in all aspects of life, really, but particularly in the economy. But you can't have it both ways. You can't demand a Prime Minister resigns and then when he does, criticise him for not being in post.
And is it not cheeky of the Labour Party to criticise the government for Boris Johnson to be on holiday when Keir Starmer is also away on holiday?
I mean, perhaps to an extent, but I think there is a difference in that Keir Starmer is in the opposition and Boris Johnson is supposed to be the Prime Minister. I just find it a bit odd. Boris Johnson's going next month. Can he just not wait and go on his holidays then? And it's just kind of a sense of reassurance. So people are struggling and yeah, it's optics, but optics can be important. People want to feel like the people in charge of the country are actually on top of this crisis and working day and night to solve this problem and reassure people.
But if Boris Johnson was here at the moment and he was actually making decisions that would have any kind of impact on people's lives in the future, there would be outrage. People would be saying, this man has no authority. He's not going to be the Prime Minister. Why is he taking charge of the country? Why is he making decisions that are going to have a long-term impact upon our lives? It just seems to me people want to have it both ways.
I think you can't win, whatever happens now. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail, Joanna, to matters of great importance to at least half the population. Packing shoes for holiday.
Well, the women are coming in for a real knocking in quite a few stories in the Daily Mail this morning, I have to say. It kind of riled the feminist in me. And this story is about kind of criticising women for taking 6 pairs of shoes on holiday with them when they apparently only wear 3.
Right, well, that's a fair point.
Yeah, but so what? If it makes women happy to take more pairs of shoes than they need, let them. I mean, who has a problem with it? They're saying the problem is women like like to match their shoes to their outfit.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
This is
Yeah, but then there's all this
article's
moulding
about
of
me.
the packing, and then, oh, can I have some of your suitcase space and all that sort of stuff, and stuff that never gets used.
You get charged more at the airport. Done that a few times.
Yeah.
But I think
Wear all the
actually
clothes.
one of the nice things about going on, obviously being on holiday is really nice in and of itself, but it's also nice the build up to it, looking forward to it, planning what you're going to wear, where you're going to go. That's, for me, that's part of the fun, the anticipation, and that includes thinking about what I'm going to wear.
Oh, James, you've got to work out what shirts you're going to wear, what colour you're going to have your hair.
Yeah, that is true. But shirts and even hair dye don't take up that much room in a case. It's shoes way more and take up so much space. If you're sharing a case, it can be annoying. So I've shared with my girlfriend and half the case is suddenly filled up with all these shoes.
You're lucky
And
it's only
many
half.
Many of them never get worn. So, yeah, I mean, it can be a bit annoying.
The thing is now with the travel chaos at the airport, it's if you're not using hand luggage, you're risking waiting a long time at the other end, aren't you? I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of people now going to hand luggage for the
Taking
first
out
time.
some of the pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is it. I think hand luggage only. I've just had my niece, who is coming on holiday with us next week, and I've told her hand luggage only. I've only booked us hand luggage.
Oh, you're so mean.
And the first thing she said was, what am I going to do with all my shoes? Well, you can't bring them.
I think the Mail might be onto something there.
I think they are onto something. I do think. Let us know if you struggle with your shoe packing. gbviews@gbnews.uk. James and Joanna, we'll see you a little bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. OK, it's just coming up to 6:50. It's time now for On Your Doorstep.
Well, our South West reporter Jeff Moody is in the port town of Fowey in South Cornwall. Jeff, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's gorgeous here in Fowey. I must admit, look, the sun's coming up over the harbour. Not many people around so far, but I've never been here before, but it is absolutely beautiful. There's lots of little shops and wine bars and galleries that I'm looking forward to exploring this morning. Very difficult to find someone who was awake this early in the morning, but I've managed to drag somebody out of bed. Meet Chris. Hello to you, Chris. What a beautiful place you live in.
Hello, good morning. Yes, it's fantastic. It's very, very picturesque, and it's a great place to live.
What sort of things are there to do here in Fowey?
It's a great destination for sailing, water sports. We have lots of paddle boarders, swimming. The coast walk comes through here, the Cornish coast path, and then there are country houses around here, Lanhydrock, a large National Trust property.
And the Fowey Festival as well. We've all heard of the Fowey Festival. What's it about? When is it?
The Fowey Festival takes place in May every year, and it commemorates Daphne du Maurier. It's been going for 25 years now. Initially the focus was more on Daphne du Maurier, but now it's very much a general festival of art and literature with something to appeal to everybody. We have interviews with authors who introduce their new books. There are coastal walks, river trips, a lot of music. There's a short story competition. There's an art and writing competition for the children. And as part of the festival also there's an art trail where there's open studios. The artists show their works, and some of the local gardens are open. So there's really something for everybody.
There's certainly plenty going on here.
Very much
So
so.
Daphne du Maurier lived here, didn't she? Now, she wrote my favourite novel of all time. I'll give you a clue. It starts with, "Last night I went to Mandalay again."
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's obviously Rebecca. Daphne du Maurier lived here from her 20s until she died in 1989. She had various houses in and around Fowey, initially in Fowey, and then she moved to your inspiration for Rebecca. She rented a house just behind Pridmouth, which is just east of here, so I beg your pardon, just west of here, and that house was said to be the inspiration for, it was Menabilly, but said to be the inspiration for Mandalay.
Can people go and visit it? Can they see Mandalay for themselves?
No, I'm afraid not. It's very secluded. It's surrounded by trees. You can't see it at all.
What a shame that is. Well, I want to go and have a look around Mandalay. This is a very busy area in this time of year, isn't it? Tourists, it's geared very much to the tourists with all the galleries, the art galleries and the shops and things. What's it like here in the winter? Is it bleak?
No, not at all. The shops remain open. I know a lot of Cornish towns become dead in the winter, but it doesn't happen in Fowey. It still attracts tourists. Obviously, those who haven't got children have to worry about school holidays can come down here. We have a lot of people coming to do the coast path, and there's a lot to do and explore around here.
And I won't ask you to name them, but there are lots of celebrities that live round and about, around the coastline, up in the hills there, aren't there?
There are indeed, yes, yes. I won't name them.
No, it's something that I don't think I'll ever better afford to get a place here. And you might be able to afford it, Steve, in time. What do you think?
Blooming gorgeous, Jeff.
Well, we want to be in Cornwall.
We do. So what are you doing the rest of the morning? Who else are you off to see, Jeff?
I am going to see a lovely lady that makes glass. She blows the most amazing glass. So I'm going to go and meet her in a little while, and then I'm going to try my hand at some Chinese brush painting.
Oh.
You know, the sort of the really intricate Chinese designs. There's a lovely lady down on the harbour that says that she's going to show me. That's in the yacht club. So I'm going to head down there a bit later on and see what's going on down there.
That sounds fascinating, actually. And I tell you what, I love a bit of glass. So buy me a piece, Jeff.
Me too.
I love a bit of glass
all right.
work. Yeah, all right, send it up to the office.
Send me the money this way and I'll buy you a piece, yeah.
All right, yeah. Invoice me, Jeff, invoice me. Thanks, Jeff. We'll see you later.
Times are tough. Times are hard.
It's
all right.
True. Blooming true. It does look lovely down there, though, doesn't it?
Lovely, yeah. If you're in Fowey in South Cornwall, do get in touch for some pictures. We need some happiness, don't we, and some light in our lives.
Yeah.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, go and find Jeff.
We wish we were in Cornwall today. That looks amazing. And he's got a great morning lined up for him, hasn't he?
I tell you what, especially when the weather's really hot, and it's, you know, even when it's not like scorching, but it's still warm. Just being by the sea on the coast is just so lovely. It's just that it's slightly cooler, isn't it?
Is there any better place than Cornwall in the sunshine?
Oh,
yeah, very jealous.
Very, very jealous, actually. Look, don't go anywhere. Still to come. We'll bring you all the very latest on the Tory leadership challenge. Yes, it's still going on. Stay with us.
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most, and again, there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clash over economic policies to tackle the Bank of England's warning over a year of recession.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Friday the 5th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We are live across the whole of the UK, online, on your radio and on TV. So whatever you're up to, you can take us with you and you don't have to miss a thing.
Lucky you. Well, here's what you were waking up to this morning.
I'm not sitting here or standing here promising you tens and tens of billions of pounds of goodies straight away, because I don't think that's the right thing to do for our economy. I think it's risky. I think it risks making the inflation problem far worse and costing you all far more.
In the Tory leadership campaign, Mr Sunak, who's trailed Liz Truss in recent polls, repeatedly said he would prioritise bringing down inflation before cutting taxes if he becomes Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Liz Truss has pledged a package of tax cuts worth £30 billion soon after she enters office.
Would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment.
Well, the Bank of England has warned that the UK is set to fall into the longest recession since the 2008 financial crisis. This follows the announcement that interest rates will rise 0.5% to 1.75%, which is the biggest hike for 27 years.
Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, will join us live from Essex shortly to look at how it's going to affect small businesses.
And as a hosepipe ban comes into force for Southern Water customers in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, we're asking you this morning, would you grass on your neighbours if you caught them watering the garden? Let us know.
As ever, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tracy's been in touch already this morning. Tracy, it's really good to hear from you. She says, I watched the debate last night and how Sunak got all that support baffles me. He never once said how he would tackle inflation. He gave us furlough, but how many companies committed fraud and at what cost? Also, eat out to help out. It might have helped businesses, but it spread COVID. It has to be said, it was one of the criticisms of it. So not impressed by that. But that studio audience last night, 2/3 backed Rishi Sunak. But of course, if you look at the polling data from Conservative Party members, then Liz Truss is 30-plus points ahead. So, but there's still time to, but people can vote online for this election. So whether they will hold off to the last minute before they vote, it's going to be interesting to see.
And I think you can also change, which we can ask Tom Harwood in a moment, but I think you can submit a postal vote, but then you can go online and change your vote, can you?
No.
No, that's not correct.
They've changed that.
Changed the rule. So I was thinking it's still all to play for then, because then you could change your vote, couldn't you?
Yeah, no, it was meant to be the case that you could vote and then change your vote, but they've scrapped that now because they were concerned about interference from China and Russia.
That does make
on
sense,
that one.
doesn't it?
So now once you vote, that's it. So there you go. But no, fair point. You changed it the other day.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Stephen,
for
being in the know. Lots of you talking about the hosepipe ban this morning. It's got lots of you talking. Andrew says, until the water company sorts out his leaks, I will not be adhering to the hosepipe ban. Oh, we've got a rebel in our ranks. Andrew says, if there were no leaks in the system and we needed to conserve water, then I would do my part. And I think that is very, very frustrating for people. I did have the figure down here, but it is millions of gallons, if not billions.
It's something like 1.4 billion gallons a day across the country.
And it's everyday people who are taking the heat then, as you said earlier, for leaks.
Doesn't mean though
the
leaks are there, so we still have to do our part, I guess. But where does the responsibility surely should lie with people getting these leaks sorted out?
Patricia makes a fantastic point here, which we haven't yet mentioned. She said, you forgot to mention the rise in population of 10 million people over the last 30 years. So, of course, water consumption has gone up massively. And, of course, that goes hand in hand with no building of reservoirs.
No building of reservoirs in 30 years. Yeah, and then the desalination. Lots of people yesterday getting in touch about desalination. Why isn't there more desalination? Which would be a really good point. It's quite an expensive process, I think. But even so, Thames Water built a £250 million desalination plant, and it's still not being used.
No. Andy makes a point about extra houses. He says it's all to do with these extra houses they keep building, but they're not building any more resources to collect water. So he would like more reservoirs to be built. I know lots of people would agree with that point. Andy, do let us know what you think about hosepipe bans, about the economy, about our conversation about legalising drugs earlier. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, or just if you're going to have a nice weekend.
Yeah.
Something cheery. We need something to cheer us up. We said this last Friday, didn't we?
Yeah, we're always looking for fun, we are.
We need a little bit of fun to lighten the mood a little bit, because it's all a bit grim and,
If you've got anything for us, do let us know.
Yeah, please do. Because, it's grim because the UK is facing its longest recession. It could be a sort of year-long recession. So we're being told, at least. The Conservative leadership hopefuls Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed over economic policies to try to tackle the forecasted downturn.
Well, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak took part in Sky News' The Battle for Number 10 on Thursday night, which saw them separately taking questions from party members.
The Foreign Secretary argued that recession would be avoided by using tax cuts and reversing the national insurance increases. Former Chancellor warned that Ms Truss's plan would make the dire economic situation worse. Here's some of the highlights.
I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
I'm worried that Liz Truss's plans will make the situation worse. And what I want to do is different. I think the government's #1 priority should be grappling with inflation. That's what I want to do. But it all starts with not making the situation worse. Because if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us, all of you, are going to just end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions. I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am so focused on gripping inflation first.
OK, well, for more, let's speak to GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood, who joins us in the studio now. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
So you were watching the debate last night. What was your reaction? It did seem from the audience as though Rishi Sunak came out on top.
It certainly did, and of course they did that show of hands at the end, about 2/3 to 1/3. But there's a crucial caveat here that a lot of people have missed. This wasn't a representative audience of Conservative Party members. This was an audience advertised as undecided Conservative Party members. Now, if we look at the latest YouGov poll, only around 11% of Conservative Party members are undecided. That's smaller than the lead that Liz Truss holds polls amongst those members. So even if every single undecided voter at this stage, assuming everything else is being equal, even if every single undecided voter went to Rishi Sunak, that wouldn't eclipse Liz Truss's lead, according to the polls that we've seen this week. So that might be a bit of a caveat. Perhaps if someone hasn't made up their mind by this point, looking at the rest of the Conservative Party membership and where they are on this question, perhaps it's not that surprising that the audience was leaning more Rishi Sunak. That being said, we've been talking about for the entirety of this campaign how slick a media performer he is. That did show today. Perhaps it's surprising that it didn't show so much in the BBC debate last week, but we really did see Rishi Sunak firing on all cylinders last night.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because a lot of the people we talk to, and people who get in touch, say he's too slick. They don't like. He's not real enough for them.
I think there is certainly a concern sometimes that politicians can feel a bit artificial, that they can sort of have an answer to every question and feel a bit too focus grouped or feel a bit too prepared. However, sometimes you do need to be slick when it comes to leading a country, when it comes to international affairs. Sometimes being a bit of a swot, having an answer to everything, yes, that can be looked down upon in some settings, but actually sometimes that's a bit of an asset as well. It's interesting, there are some similarities, I think, that we can draw almost between Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer on this point. Yes, sometimes said to be a bit bookish, but actually sometimes that can produce dividends, if not all the time, sometimes at the dispatch box.
Is Tracy right when she says Sunak never talks about how he's actually going to tackle inflation?
Well, I've been speaking to the Rishi Sunak campaign over the course of last night, and they sent to me a 3-point plan that Rishi Sunak has. The first of which is to let the Bank of England do their thing when it comes to monetary policy, so that's interest rates being independent with the Bank of England. The second part of his plan is keeping the debt and deficit under control so that there's not too much excess revving up of the economy in that sense. And the third is supply-side reform, so that all of those supply-side drivers of inflation can be dealt with, although that does seem to be a longer-term ambition. So to the sense that he has a plan, there's the three elements to it. We haven't yet seen all of those individual bits of supply-side reform being spelled out, although we do know the broad direction in terms of his intention to keep debt and deficit under control. That being said, there was a moment last night that raised a few eyebrows when Kay Burley asked Rishi Sunak what he would do in terms of helping people through this winter. We know that energy bills are expected to be so much higher than they are now, and he said that you could look at his record and he would be willing to step in and spend money. Now that seems to go against what he was saying in terms of keeping the debt and deficit under control if he is going to have an emergency spending package. Why would that be so different to an emergency tax cut package when it comes to stoking the drivers of inflation? That's a question that his campaign has yet to answer.
We're almost out of time. We are out of time. Just a quick one on Keir Starmer, which I want to throw in. He's been found guilty of breaching the MP's code of conduct over a plot of land that he sold, getting personal gifts and all this sort of thing. 8 times, I think, in all of this. He said at the beginning of this investigation he was absolutely confident he would be cleared, and he hasn't been. If this had been Boris Johnson, he'd been calling for his resignation, wouldn't he?
I think that's probably a fair assessment. But of course, Keir Starmer has cast himself as Mr. Rules. It seems that at the very least, this shows his office organisation has not been up to scratch. What this is late declarations or failing to declare these donations in kind, or indeed money that has been achieved through that sale of that plot of land over £100,000. It's interesting that this hasn't actually got to the top of the news bulletins elsewhere. I wonder, in a different political time, when we're not talking about the dire straits of the economy, the inflation crisis, the 5 consecutive quarters of negative growth that are predicted, potentially this would be a much bigger story.
Yeah, probably right. Tom, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Ormskirk in Lancashire. Oh, good old Ormskirk. Speak to one of our viewers and listeners, Peter Black. Morning to you, Peter. Oh, I love Ormskirk. It's really good to see you this morning. What do you make of all of this, then, when it comes to the leadership debates?
I
I mean, in a sense, it doesn't really matter because I'm not a Tory party member, but I think the applause spoke for itself last night in terms of that audience. I just wish that they talk about the detail. And for example, the national insurance increase, although it increased in April, it went back down, in most people's salaries last month. And if people earn less than £40,000, they are definitely better off. And it seems to me that Liz Truss is addressing the wealthy. The reversal will only make the rich better off. It's not going to make the average person any better off at all. That's the main point I wanted to make, really.
Peter, is that something that worries you then? Because so far the two candidates have obviously been playing to the Conservative membership gallery. That's what they have to do because that's obviously where their votes come from. But for everyday people, what they care about is their livelihoods and the pounds in their pocket, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there were things promised, for example, during the whole Brexit thing. We were told that the 5% VAT on gas and electric was an imposition from Europe, and that once we were out of Europe, that would go. That was a promise that I remember being made, and I thought was a good idea. And it doesn't appear to have happened yet, even though, the revenues from that will be truly huge at the moment, because obviously the price of gas. My gas bill's gone up from £134 in September, and it's now £376 a month. So people are on fixed tariffs and things like that. As they come to the end of those, they're going to get a real shock. Going forward.
It's going to be a huge jump. So, Peter, were you not impressed by Liz Truss saying, as she repeated last night, well, she put a moratorium on the green levy, because that'd make a huge difference?
I'm in two minds on that. I think, I think they've probably had more green levy over the last year than they would normally have had, so they could maybe afford to suspend it for a while. But obviously the green issues are really important. I think I was listening to the boss of Octopus Energy on the radio a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how electricity prices are pegged to the price of gas, and that includes renewables. So even people who have chosen to go with a company that's got an ethical standpoint and believes in the sort of green agenda are being fleeced at the moment because of an artificial link between the price of electric to the price of gas. And I'd like them to see them do something about that. That's surely a UK issue rather than an international markets issue.
Fair point. Look, on the cost of living sort of perspective, you're an optician, aren't you? Nice glasses, by the way. I mean, do you see a difference in trend? I mean, I know eyesight is something that we need to be very careful of. It is an essential. However, it's an essential that people can delay making any changes. Are you seeing a difference?
Yes, I think we are. And I've seen this many times before in the different recessions. I qualified in the 1980s, and each recession we have, people do put off having their eyes examined, and yet it is an essential, it's an essential healthcare exercise. By all means, put off buying your glasses, but don't put off the healthcare bit. People should get their eyes tested so that we're checking the health of the eyes. There's about 1 million people in this country who've, lost their sight unnecessarily because they didn't, get it checked out regularly. So yeah, it is important, but we see it in every recession. People will, for example, bring their own frames in and have new lenses put in them to save money, rather than buying new frames that they may have done before. I've been through the whole, if interest rates follow inflation as they've done in the past, I've certainly personally seen negative equity in the past. Where your house is worth less than what's owing on it, and if you're trapped by that's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, that is a nightmare. Well, let's hope we don't end up in that situation again. When was that? In the 90s, there was quite a lot of negative equity, wasn't there? Let's hope we don't end up back there. Peter Black, it's really good to talk to you. I hope Ormskirk brings you a lovely sunny day today.
And that reminds me, I need to book an eye test.
Yeah.
I haven't done mine in probably years now.
Really?
I'm blind as a bat.
Are you?
Yeah, really
Have
bad.
you got contacts in?
Yeah,
All right.
I'm very bad. -7, I think.
I don't know what
That's
mine
quite
is.
bad.
My eyes are...
But that reminds me, but that is really interesting. That was a really good question to him because, I mean, it's affecting everybody, isn't it? Opticians, people not wanting to buy new frames. I mean, that's what we're going to see. Every single business is going to be affected by this. And we know that our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, is going to a small business in Essex a little bit later, and we're going to be talking about the interest rates rises with them, how it's going to affect them. But if you are running a small business, do get in touch at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We do love to hear from you.
We certainly do. It is 7:18. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines this morning. The US has postponed a long-planned test of an intercontinental ballistic missile in the hope of diffusing escalations of tensions with China. Beijing has launched a number of missiles into waters near Taiwan in response to the US House Speaker's visit, saying the US is playing with fire. Its government staging the largest military exercise ever in the region.
Electricity was stolen a record number of times last year as people tried to keep their lights on amid a growing energy crisis. Tampering with the line or bypassing a meter can cause serious injury or lead to up to 5 years in prison. Home Office figures show England and Wales police received more than 3,500 reports in the year to March, up 13% on the year before.
Footfall in the UK stalled last month. Record temperatures and the cost of living deterring people from heading to local shops. The British Retail Consortium said footfall was down by more than 14% compared to the previous 3 years. It also says shopping centre visits were down even more, actually, nearly 25% on 3 years earlier. I tell you what is getting you going this morning is the hosepipe ban.
Yeah.
And people just furious about it. And it's not that people want to be careless with water. It's the hypocrisy, if you like, of the fact that so many companies are not solving the leak issue. Jim in Devon says we pay extortionate water rates for a pretty poor service. Considering the amount of visitors we get every year, there is a heavy drain on our water system, pressure's down, leaks everywhere that take weeks to get repaired, not fit for purpose.
Yeah, and Dave agrees. He says lack of investment, poor planning and profiteering are the cause of the water shortage. And you're completely right, it's the hypocrisy in all of this. I mean, I don't even have a garden, but it does drive me mad when you see the poor service, the leaks everywhere, billions of gallons of leaks, of water wastage in a day. And it's people that pay good money for a service and they now can't use the water.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem fair.
It's South West Water, isn't it, where the ban comes into force today?
Southern Water, yeah, Hampshire and
Southern
Isle of
Water,
Wight. Yeah.
right, and they have 90 something. I think I'm not exactly right on this, but it's around 95 million litres of water leaking every single day. And we're told you can't water the garden or even, got to turn the tap off when you brush your teeth, which is a sensible thing to do. Don't get me wrong, but when they're throwing swimming pools worth of water, out
every hour.
every day.
Yeah.
It's absolutely cracking.
And Andrew was in touch with us earlier and said he wasn't going to adhere to the rules. He was going to continue watering his gardens. Do let us know. Will you be sticking to the rules with the hosepipe ban if you're in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight?
Would you snoop on Andrew? Would you dob him in? Because they're setting up these snoop lines so you can report your neighbours. Would you do that?
Yeah, people would, wouldn't they?
People would.
We were having a bit of a debate in the office earlier. Some people would, some people wouldn't.
Yes.
I think it depends on the relationship with your neighbours.
Yeah. I think it probably does. I think it's
Politics,
it's a pretty rotten thing to do myself. But let us know.
Would you be out watering your garden on the sly? You can't really say on air, can you? Tell me later.
Well, I'm not in a hosepipe ban area.
Oh, lucky you.
So I don't have to think about it at the moment.
Have you got a nice garden? I imagine you would.
I have got a nice garden. I'm a northerner. Gardens are important to me.
Got green fingers?
Yeah, ish. I try my best. But I wouldn't break, if there is a ban, then I think you've got to adhere to the ban. Well, it costs you £1,000 if you get caught, so I'm not risking that.
Who can afford that in this day and age?
I mean, honestly,
it's a lot of money.
Ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
OK, well, the Bank of England predicts a new recession that will be as long, but not as deep as the one in 2008 and 2009. It is predicted that GDP will fall as much as 2.1%.
CPI inflation is now expected to peak at just over 13% in Q4 of this year and to remain at very elevated levels throughout much of 2023. Now, this rise in energy prices has exacerbated the fall in real incomes and so led to another significant deterioration in the outlook for activity in the UK and in the rest of Europe. GDP growth in the UK has slowed and the economy is now forecast to enter recession later this year.
It's a grim picture. What's it going to mean for you as an individual, or if you're a small business owner? Actually, it might be an even sort of grimmer picture, to be honest. Let's head to Danbury in Essex and our reporter Paul Hawkins. Morning, Paul.
Morning, Stephen. Morning, Ellie. Yeah, we're in Danbury in Essex. We're at the headquarters of a small business called Timbermaker. It is also the family home. We are in the conservatory at the moment. In fact, you've just been talking about the garden. That's pretty much where we are at the moment. So this is where Timbermaker, the offices of Timbermaker are. And we can speak now to Anath and his wife, Meghna, who run the company. Guys, thanks for speaking to us this morning. First of all, Anath, just tell us what do you do here? And we've got some of your products here, by the way.
Yeah.
In fact, let's road test them on this fantastic bench. Yeah, just tell us a bit about what you do.
So I'm the co-founder of Timbermaker, and we make handcrafted solid wood furniture, all from sustainable materials.
Yeah.
And it's all made in limited quantities. And we also do bespoke as well.
Yeah.
It's not mass produced and it's all handcrafted, essentially. Yeah. We get this made in our own studio back in Jodhpur in Rajasthan, in India. We ship them here, and we've got a warehouse in Kent,
yep.
Which then gets sent out to customers all across the UK.
Yeah.
We've been going for about 18 months now. And it's been good. It's been a decent start, better than what we expected. But last couple of months, especially after the war, things have kind of started to slow down a bit, especially with the inflation going up, material prices going up, and so on and so forth.
Well, let's just focus on that for a second. You said materials are going up. Just give us an idea of how much.
Nearly, the prices of wood slabs have gone up nearly about 30% in the last 4 to 5 months.
Right.
Which is obviously very concerning because automatically, as a small business, we start feeling the pinch if we don't have that price gap, which we don't want to pass on to the customers. I mean, so far we've been able to hold off on passing it on to the customer, but there's only so far and so long we can go before we start kind of passing it down.
Yeah.
But we're trying our best, so that everybody's in a difficult situation. So we're trying our best not to kind of, get the customer to pay the bill.
Yeah. Immediately. And have you been hit by the high energy bills as well? Because small businesses don't have a price cap when it comes to energy bills, do they? Unlike, domestic customers.
Yeah. Not so much from an electricity or gas perspective, because we're a small business. I'm operating from the house. But overall, in terms of our supply chain, so logistics and warehouse, the prices there have gone up because they've felt the pinch.
Yeah.
So lighting, electricity, gas, fuel, automatically the price gets pushed down to us, and we end up footing the bill for it.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is we try and partner with organizations that have sustainability at their heart. So our warehouse is run 50% by solar energy, so it's not immediate, and they run their fleet with low emission or electric fleet.
Yeah.
But again, they don't come cheap.
Yeah.
They're expensive, so somebody's got to pay for it.
And you said there's also a challenge with recruitment. You want to hire, right? You want to create jobs, and it's all about growth at the moment. That seems to be the magic word if we're going to get out of this mess that we're in, this economic mess. What's the challenge with recruitment?
Right. I mean, first of all, the rise or increase in NI contributions from an employer perspective. It's hard for us to swallow at the moment because we're trying to scale up. And I want to recruit local candidates as apprentices or interns or trainees. So I'm working with the likes of Federation for Small Business or Essex Chamber of Commerce, who've got contacts who can then help us work with the local council or Essex County Council, for example, to try and help us recruit apprentices through a funded scheme or apprenticeship scheme or a grant. But it takes time, and you need to find the right candidate who's invested as us in the business, so that we can help them grow and then take it from there. But we've had challenges in terms of getting the right candidate.
Actually, in terms of the right candidate, are you a Rishi Sunak fan, Liz Truss fan? Just very quickly, who are you going for?
I mean, it varies. I mean, for now, it's Rishi Sunak in terms of how he's played out his economic policies. Should he become the Prime Minister? He has mentioned that it's going to be dark days ahead, but it's in the short term. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, people have had 2 years of difficult period, and 10 years of austerity hasn't helped either. But looking at short-term gains in terms of budget, the slashing, tax rises, and so on and so forth, is only going to make it worse in the long run. So it's not us, it's our children who are going to pay for it.
So Team Sunak, and just very quickly, Meg, what's it like being involved with a business like this?
I think it can be as opinionated as you can get. So I think he comes to me when he likes a design. He says, "What do you think of this?" So I'm free to say, "Okay, it's rubbish. I wouldn't buy it."
So he designs the products, shows them to you, and you say that's rubbish.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah. But I think some of the designs are really good, and I would definitely go for it. So it's more like me trying to say, okay, as a consumer, is that something that I want in my house? And because I haven't seen it before, it's like for me, it's all fresh. So I think that opinion is something that he wants and he expects. So which is good. Like you can be as honest as you want with the company. So. Yeah.
I'd rather hear it from her than from the customer.
If
it doesn't pass the test at
you
home,
need that level of honesty in your relationship, don't you? On a business level and a personal level.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, guys, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Really appreciate it. So, Anath and Meg there, who run Timbermaker from their home here in Danbury in Essex. Really challenging environment at the moment for businesses. Remember, there's a price cap that kind of shields a lot of us from domestic price energies, but for businesses, and a lot of businesses are trying to really hammer this home, that they have no shield. They're looking at energy costs going up fivefold. A lot of businesses are going to find it very difficult to survive through the winter.
Yeah, no, they certainly are. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere this morning. We've got all the sport heading our way in just a moment.
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most, and again there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells, and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north, with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
7:35, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Yeah, still to come, Joanna Williams and James Budworth will join us to take a look at the newspapers. That's in 10 minutes.
And join me for On Your Doorstep, where I'm out and about in Fowey, in the south of Cornwall, and it's beautiful.
Just before 8. But now, time for Mr. Aidan McGee, who's here with all the very latest on what to look forward to in the sport and football. Premier League tonight.
Yeah, we've not discussed it too much this week. It's been overshadowed by other events in recent weeks. Obviously, we had a big Wimbledon. We had the Commonwealth Games underway as well. So we've had things ticking over, a bit of golf as well. But yeah, it's back tonight. Different season to what we've known previously. 2 seasons ago, we had the interruptions with COVID. And so we're more experienced now at condensing fixtures into a short space of time. But this season is going to be extraordinary because we've got, of course, the elephant in the room, the World Cup in the winter, which we've never had before in the history of sport, in history of football. So that kicks off, middle of November. You're back again Boxing Day. And it poses questions, really, raises questions for me. The World Cup in Qatar is hugely controversial, but that doesn't diminish the prestige of the tournament. Players still want to play in the World Cup. They take it hugely, very, very seriously. England on the verge, they could win a World Cup one day. They've got an excellent squad. So international football is probably more important now than it has been maybe in the last 10, 15 years. So what do the players think about it? Well, if you're a player and you've got England coming up and it's your chance to impress and you're travelling to a different environment in terms of the temperature and the pitches and the community, you're having a World Cup in a small area, are you really going to be putting it in for your club in the month before the World Cup starts? Are you going to be pulling out?
I was going to ask you how this works, logistically as well. Do they literally come away from the club for training and then do the World Cup?
Yeah, you can't just walk into a World Cup and say, right, let's kick off tomorrow. You need to spend time, FIFA dictate that you need to spend time with your teammates for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So you've got to go to a different part of the world, different time zone. It's a completely different climate. Yes, the stadiums are are temperate. They've had the air conditioning adjusted, but not when you're moving between arenas and between environments and between training bases and stadiums, you're still going to be walking around in heat. It's a period of acclimatisation for everybody. England players will adjust. There could be countries in other parts of the world who find it even more difficult. Say you come from, I don't know, Iceland or something like that. Iceland aren't there, incidentally, but say you came from, say you came from the North Pole or the South Pole, you know, and you're going to Qatar. Yeah. I'm not aware that sort of the South Pole and North Pole have been enveloped into FIFA as yet, but that's only my own example, not official. But you know what I'm saying? But if you're keen to make an impact at the World Cup, in the few fixtures leading up, there's always a phrase at the end of the season in the Premier League, are your minds on the beach? You've done what you had to do, you get to 40 points, you're safe in the Premier League. There's not much left to do in the final 3 weeks of the season. Do you really go in for that challenge? Do you really risk injuring your leg or your knee or your ankle? Is that going to be the same at the World Cup? Is the World Cup so important to players that they're going to maybe ease off a bit in the Premier League in the 3 weeks leading up to it? And then they're coming back on Boxing Day. So you've had that World Cup, you might have gone deep into the tournament. Not so much of a problem if you're in the first gone.
No, no, go on.
All right.
I was just trying to give you a general, because we've only got 90 seconds left.
Oh, really? Okay, you did it. You put the penny in my slot. You know, that's dangerous. But no, that's... Listen, we've got Palace and Arsenal this evening. Arsenal spent £113 million on players. Crystal Palace got an issue because their vaccinated squad went to overseas to play in friendlies, and the other half of the squad who weren't vaccinated had to play London friendlies against the likes of my mob, QPR. So this is the first time they're playing together tonight. It's not an ideal way to start the season.
No, some good signings for Arsenal, though.
Yeah, good signings. Yeah, they've signed Gabriel Jesus, of course. I mean, proven. I'm going to crack the joke. Yeah, he's Jesus. No, don't ask me what he's like on crosses. But he's up front. He's proven at top level with Manchester City. That's a very good signing for them, and I think they're going to challenge. They've got some good young players coming through as well. I think it'll be a straight duel between between City and Liverpool. Below that, it's Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea for 3 and 4. Man United, I don't think they're going to be part of the conversation this season for all the problems they've had.
OK, Aidan, thank you.
Nice to see you.
And you. Look, don't go anywhere. We've got the papers heading your way. Just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Time to take you through the papers this morning with the author and academic Joanna Williams and the journalist James Bloodworth. Good to see you both this morning. Joanna, let's kick off with the Express, should we? Reminding us that Recession is on the way.
I mean, this is the grim news that's dominating every paper this morning. The Express is putting it at a 15-month recession, which I think is the longest. It's saying time to batten down the hatches, which people will be doing, I'm sure, looking at where they can cut costs. I'm sure lots of people have done that anyway. I actually think it's probably a lot more serious now than just people making individual decisions, and we really need to focus on what the country as a whole is doing. I don't think just putting on an extra pair of socks this winter is really going to cut it for the amount of savings people are going to be required to have to make. But I think also what's interesting about this story on the cover of the Express is that questions are being asked now about the role of the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, and people are really beginning to ask, what's he been doing for the past couple of years? Is he up to the job? And what about the whole institution of the Bank of England as an independent?
Should it be taken back into Parliament, as Liz Truss is arguing? What do you reckon?
I mean, I think it's a bit early to say. I mean, there have been mixed feelings over whether the Bank of England should increase interest rates earlier or not, but I think it's hard to just call for its dismissal straight away. I think the last thing we need is more instability, which would ensue if we got rid of the head of the Bank of England right now.
But it does seem a bit odd that you've got just 9 people, 9 unelected people, essentially quite unaccountable people, making these decisions which have a major economic impact.
But experts?
Well, you say experts. I'm a little bit sceptical. I mean, they don't seem to have done that brilliant a job. They had one task, which was to keep inflation low, and they seem to have failed miserably.
OK. Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know what to think about making it independent or keeping it independent or not at the moment.
James, should we look at something totally different now? This is in the Mail, the deer population. So it's at its highest in 1,000 years, but not necessarily a good thing.
No, so I mean, hunters are to be allowed to shoot deer at night as numbers of deer hit 2 million. Now, Britain, we're a nation of animal lovers, so many of us, you know, when you first read this, you think, oh no, like these poor deer. But it's one of those issues which sounds cruel, but not doing anything at all, maybe even worse in terms of the long-term impact. So, yeah, the deer population is at its highest level for 1,000 years. There are now so many deer that woodlands are being destroyed, and this is threatening the bird population because of a lack of habitats. And also, between 10 and 20 people every year are killed through car collisions with deer. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lack of predator for deer because we've killed most of those off, such as lynx, bear and wolves. So it does seem to be something where, there needs to be some kind of intervention. I mean, as long as it's done in a humane way, it seems like a sensible policy, even if it does make us a bit squeamish.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of it, but you do need proper animal husbandry going on to maintain these populations correctly. Look, I'm really sorry. Don't go anywhere, because we might come back to you, but it would suddenly become very, very squeezed for time today. But Joanna and James, thank you both for now. Let's talk cost of living, should we? Because it's the one thing which is dominating actually all of our lives at the moment, whichever party you would vote for at the general election. So let's see what the opposition make of it all at the moment. Talk to the Shadow Secretary for Work and Pensions, Jonathan Ashworth. Morning to you. It's good to see you. What should we be doing? What should the government be doing? What is the Labour Party proposing?
Well, good morning. It's good to see you as well. Look, what we heard from the Bank of England yesterday, it's devastating. It'll be terrifying for your viewers this morning. And I actually think it's a pretty devastating verdict on 12 years of Conservative mismanagement, where we've had lacklustre growth, failure to make our economy more productive, and that's the key to sustainably raising living standards and stabilising this cost of living crisis. Look, we're going to have 15 million households in fuel poverty unless the government takes some action. That's more than half of the households in the UK grappling with these energy bills, which could go as high as £4,000. People really are facing a winter of choices, impossible choices between freezing or starving. We've got to go further. We propose measures like taking the VAT off the fuel bills, not giving a £4 billion tax break to gas and oil companies, use that money to take the VAT off, to retrofit rapidly homes to make them more energy efficient. But we've got to go further on the payments as well. We'll be making more proposals on that soon. And then more broadly, you've got to grow your economy and make it more productive. And one of the ways in which we can do that is by getting more people into work or supporting people to stay in work. The Bank of England's warning that we're going to see unemployment rise sharply, yet we don't have in this country a specialist employment service to help people get the skills that they need, to give them the rapid support that they need to get them back into jobs. And the government should be doing that now. They should be really active on that now, because you've got over 1 million vacancies, but you've got 1.7 million people who are currently inactive who say they want to work. So we need to support those people to get into work now. And that's the type of reform that you need in your economy, which helps you bring down the cost of living.
People who are struggling right now, though, in the immediate term, those people who are working in the immediate term. You talk about taking action on fuel bills and things. Green levy. I mean, how many times have we talked about this? Liz Truss at last is saying, will there be a moratorium on the green levy? That would make a huge and significant and immediate impact on people.
But we need to be investing in our transition to green technologies, because part of the reason why we have been less resilient to these international shocks is because we don't have. We're totally reliant on the international energy markets. We don't have enough of our own homegrown green energy sources, so we do need to be funding that. So, I mean, Liz Truss says she's going to get rid of it, but actually, that will just make us more dependent on these international energy markets, which will make us less resilient.
Jonathan Ashworth, good morning to you, first of all. But surely the priority right now isn't on green energy. Surely it is about people's livelihoods. You know, you said yourself, choosing between heating and eating. People care about the pound in their pocket. Don't they want to hear about how it's going to affect them, less so about green energy?
Well, people really do care about their livelihoods, which are, which we're facing a juggernaut is coming. It's a hammer. This is going to be a hammer blow to people's already fragile finances. An energy bill at £4,000, that's way over a third of the total full state pension that a pensioner relies on. So you need to support those people now. We need to look at those payments again, which Rishi Sunak or the government announced a few weeks ago. We've also said, for example, that rather than cutting the pension in real terms this year and cutting universal credit in real terms this year, which the government have done, you could have brought forward some of next year's inflation-proofed up rises in the pension in universal credit this year. That would get more money into people's pockets. It's been done. Something similar has been done before. Barbara Castle, back in the day, back in the 70s, when she was Social Security Secretary, raised the pension for a second time in a year. So there are things that you can do. The point about green energy is if you invest in green energy, you make yourself less reliant on these international gas supplies in the future. So you need to plan for the future, but you also need to take action now on supporting people and getting more people into work.
Can I ask you about Sir Keir Starmer? He's broken the MP's code of conduct 8 times. He said he was absolutely confident he'd done nothing wrong. They've found that on 8 occasions he has done something wrong. If this was Boris Johnson who'd done that, you'd be calling for his resignation.
Well, actually, on this, the Standards Commissioner in Parliament has said that she accepts Keir Starmer's apology. They accept that it was minor and inadvertent. And remember, this is not registering things. This is not lying about something. This is just not meeting the deadline. Sometimes not meeting the deadline by a day or two. Keir Starmer's apologised. It is considered to be minor and inadvertent, and that he's put in place measures in his office to make sure it doesn't happen again. But this isn't the same as getting a big donor to pull the flat up and lying about it.
Let's hold your hands up to it, though. It's not good enough, is it, from the leader of the opposition?
Well, look, I mean, that's why he's apologised, and that's why he's put in place processes to make sure it happen again. But it is not on the scale of somebody who is outright lying about accepting thousands and thousands of pounds to do up a flat and not being clear about it, or all the other lies that characterise the partying and all the rest of it that we saw. It's of a different scale. This was not meeting a deadline, sometimes by a day or two, and he's apologised for it.
Jonathan Ashworth, we're out of time. It's been really good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Well, it's 7:51. It's time now for On Your Doorstep.
Let's head to Jeff Moody then, who's in beautiful Fowey in South Cornwall. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning. Well, I'm here in Joe Dam's handmade glass, trying to find you a present within my budget, Stephen. There's some amazing things here, some amazing pieces. Just look at this, look. This artisan reef shawl. It's at a snatch at £675. I love you, Stephen Dixon, but not quite that much. I love you enough for a minnow shawl, 150 quid. Maybe. This is beautiful. Look at these. The painting on these is incredible. An artisan extra large round dish, £345. And these are something that really appeal to me. They're incredible. Laura, how do you make a piece of glass into that shape?
It's alchemy.
Correct.
Complete and utter alchemy. It's actually using plain sheets of glass and then powders and enamels to create the colours. Then it's heated in a kiln up to about 800 degrees centigrade, fusing the glass. And then to create the forms you see behind you, that's then put onto a mould and slumped. So we never know what we're going to get when we open the kilns. It's a surprise each time.
Do you mainly sell to the tourists here, or do locals buy this as well?
Very much both. I mean, this time of year, definitely it's the visitors. They're taking home a memento of Cornwall. But we have a very strong local following as well, and all throughout the whole of the UK.
But are you finding, as people's finances are squeezed so much like they are now, people would have come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to take a souvenir of Cornwall, I'm going to take a beautiful piece of glass as a piece of art, and they're now saying, no, I'll take a stick of rock or some shortbread instead, because people just don't have the money to spend on things like this, do they?
I think with someone coming into to one of our galleries, they're wanting to invest in something, and they're wanting something that looks beautiful, that's going to last their lifetime. So a piece of glass, they're actually investing in a piece of artwork. So we're still seeing people wanting to buy something beautiful, and they're prepared to spend that money.
So you actually haven't found your sales going down at this time of year? That's...
I mean, people might be sort of going for something a little bit smaller. They may have bought something larger last year. So they might go for a coaster or a hanging.
There are plenty of artists in Cornwall, aren't there?
It's an absolute home.
Artists everywhere. How come? What is it about Cornwall that attracts so many artists?
So many people say it's the light. And there's been scientific studies to say there's something different about the light in Cornwall, and that's very true. And it's the whole atmosphere of the place. It just seems to attract people who've got that creative talent to them, and they stay and they develop their businesses here.
OK, so what have you got for me to buy for our talent back at base? Anything sort of around a £5?
Not quite a £5, but we've got these lovely coasters with all the different sea creatures on, so they're £12.
Stephen, what about a coaster for 12 quid? Shall I get you one of those?
Well, I like the sound of a coaster, but I tell you what I spotted on the other side of that display, Jeff, is like things that you would hang from the window. Dangly things on the other side of that display. No, in front of you.
Dangly things on the other side of the display. Oh, these! A rainbow mini wish stick.
Beautiful.
£22. If you can get me £22 in the next 5 minutes, I'll get it for you.
Yeah, all right. Send me an email, Jeff, and I shall WhatsApp you 22 quid. See what she'll do as a discount. Love it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful stuff. Give her our best, won't you, Jeff? Because I think what she does is absolutely amazing.
I will. Thank you very much. See you in an hour's time.
Will do.
Thank you, Jeff.
I love all of that sort of stuff.
I love the fact you're shopping virtually through the TV
shopping.
via the regional reporter. That's what I love.
Yeah, but I tell you what, I mean, stuff like that is expensive,
Yes.
so it's not the sort of thing you can buy all the time. But if you get it there, she's right. It's like a beautiful piece of art that looks different in every light and all the rest of it.
And it's a craft, isn't it? And it's
a skill.
It's a skill.
That's what you're paying for, isn't it?
Course.
Because, I mean, it's not like everyone can do it.
And it's supporting a small business as well, which, as we just heard from Paul Hawkins there, who's visiting a small business in Essex, it is very tough out there. So if you can support a small business, we know they'd appreciate it more now than ever. GB News at GBViews, at gbnews.uk. Lots of you have been in touch.
Yes, Philippa. Now, Philippa's got a bone to pick. She says, my late father told me that when you sat down, your suit jacket should be unbuttoned to avoid creasing. Stephen is a smart and snappy dresser. Love you, Philippa.
True.
I noticed his jacket is buttoned up. Is it something to do with single or double buttoned jackets? No. I'll tell you what it is, and your dad's probably right, but if I undo it when you're on set like that, and it just tends to go all flappy and it's just not as... It just looks smarter buttoned up. But I'll tell you the secret, if you've got a 3-button, it's sometimes fastened, always, never.
Always, sometimes,
no,
never.
Sometimes, always, never.
Might need a minute or two. Please don't wear them.
And if it's a 2-button jacket like this, you always fasten the top one, never fasten the bottom one. Same with waistcoats, never fasten the bottom button. Don't ask me why, it's what I was told.
Stephen Dixon is the man in the know.
There you go. Don't go anywhere, lots more still to come for you, including the very latest on the energy price cap. Oh.
Yeah, that's after this.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clash over economic policies to tackle the Bank of England's warning over more than a year of recession.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 5th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We're live across the whole of the UK, we're online, we're on your radio, we're on your TV, so wherever you are, whatever you're up to today, take us out and about with you.
There's no escape. Well, this is what you're waking up to this morning.
I'm not sitting here or standing here promising you tens and tens of billions of pounds of goodies straight away, because I don't think that's the right thing to do for our economy. I think it's risky. I think it risks making the inflation problem far worse and costing you all far more.
Well, in the Tory leadership campaign, Rishi Sunak, who's trailing Liz Truss in the polls, has repeatedly said he would prioritise bringing down inflation before cutting taxes if he becomes Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Liz Truss has pledged a package of tax cuts worth £30 billion soon after she enters office.
Would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment.
We're going to be talking to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, in just a moment. Also for you this morning.
The Bank of England has warned that the UK is set to fall into the longest recession since the 2008 financial crisis. This follows the announcement that interest rates will rise 0.5% to 1.75%. That's the biggest hike for 27 years.
As a hosepipe ban comes into force for Southern Water customers in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, we're asking this morning, would you grass on your neighbours if you caught them watering the garden?
And join me for On Your Doorstep, where I'm out and about in Fowey, in the south of Cornwall, and it's beautiful.
Well, our southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody will join us again at just after 9:15. As ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Robert's been in touch already. He says, my question would be, how can we believe that Rishi Sunak's policies would work? He was Chancellor for 2 years and nothing changed. I think that Liz Truss wants to be bold with her policies, and that's what we need. Sue says, Rishi just appeals to the people who can afford the cost of living. Liz is reaching out to those who need help.
And Keith says Sunak knows economics. His furlough scheme was necessary in order to combat the effects of the lockdowns, which we were forced into. That's why he's aware of the real dangers we are facing regarding inflation, which can only be addressed by the measures that he's been describing.
And on that national insurance rise, which Liz Truss has said she would reverse, some of you were getting in touch saying, well, doesn't that only, because the cap of national insurance was raised at the same time, some people saying, well, doesn't that only benefit the better off as a result if that was reversed, as Liz Truss wants to do? Peter says, it's a good point, national insurance isn't just about a tax on employees, but a tax on employers too. It stifles growth and pay rises. So keep your thoughts coming through on that, because it is obviously going to be a very hot topic today after that news yesterday that the UK faces its longest recession. So Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed last night over economic policies to tackle the forecasted downturn.
Well, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak took part in Sky News' The Battle for Number 10 on Thursday night, which saw them separately taking questions from party members.
Foreign Secretary argued that recession could be avoided using tax cuts and reversing that national insurance rise. The former Chancellor said that Ms Truss's plans would make the dire economic situation actually much worse. Let's have a look.
I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
I'm worried that Liz Truss's plans will make the situation worse. And what I want to do is different. I think the government's #1 priority should be grappling with inflation. That's what I want to do. But it all starts with not making the situation worse. Because if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us, all of you, are going to just end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions. I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am so focused on gripping inflation first.
Well, for more, let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joins us in the studio now. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
What's your reaction to the debate last night, then? Is it fair to say that it went down best for Rishi Sunak with the audience?
Certainly with the audience, it went down best for Rishi Sunak, although there's a big caveat that we need to put on that, which is that the audience is made up, Sky News say, of undecided voters. Now, according to the latest YouGov opinion poll of Conservative Party members, only around 11% of them are undecided. And Liz Truss, out of the raw numbers, has 60%. So it might not be the most consequential fact that the audience seemed to prefer Rishi Sunak. That might not tell us much about how the overall Conservative Party membership sees this. But it's an interesting exercise nonetheless, because, of course, Rishi Sunak has been said to be a more slick performer when it comes to these sort of events. And I think he did show that yesterday. He didn't stumble. He had answers for most of those questions and was able to put across in a relatively compelling way, at least to those in the room, his plan to not cut taxes too quickly, but instead deal with inflation first, he said, although there were some caveats to that probably could have been prodded a little bit more. He's U-turned twice on the matter of tax, and he did last night suggest that he may well be wanting to step in with greater spending when it comes to alleviating the cost of living crisis, which by his own terms would be necessitated by more borrowing, potentially more inflationary too. So pluses and minuses for Rishi Sunak there.
It's interesting because it's just saying from Sue's email this morning, Rishi appealing to the people who can afford the cost of living crisis, Liz reaching out to those people who need help. Now, there's a lot of people who may say, yeah, he's got a good economic strategy moving forward, but what about the here and now? That's his problem, isn't it?
Certainly, there doesn't seem to be the big retail offer in terms of what's going to happen. Now, it must be said that he has changed position from the start of this campaign. Just last week, he announced that he would take away that VAT levy on energy bills, so that would be some immediate help, although that does slightly run against his hard truths pitch that he started off this campaign with, because of course that's an expensive thing to do and something that he himself opposed at the dispatch box of the House of Commons when he was Chancellor. But yes, it does seem that when it comes to those big retail offers of tax cuts, reducing the green energy levies on energy bills, but also reversing the national insurance rise, that's Liz Truss's policy. Rishi Sunak in the short term, the thing that he said he would do is temporarily get rid of that VAT levy on energy bills. So I suppose you can make the argument that Rishi Sunak has said he would do some things, but clearly not going quite as far in terms of spending commitments as Liz Truss.
It is really interesting, isn't it, these forecasts from the Bank of England and how it's going to affect Rishi Sunak's run in this race. I mean, just if we're looking at the GBNews, Jerry in Ramsgate saying Rishi Sunak's been in charge of the economy for the last 2 years. Why on earth would you vote for him to be the next Prime Minister? That's why we're in this mess. Whereas Keith says Sunak knows his economics. The furlough scheme was necessary. He's the man for the job. Is this an opportunity for Rishi Sunak to take his time to shine? Can he kind of claw back the momentum that's been lost in the last few weeks?
It's so interesting. This campaign has mainly focused on the economy from day one. It's been two competing economic visions. Rishi Sunak, who, ironically, given that he wanted Boris Johnson to go, is almost representing the stasis argument, is representing the continuity argument, I should say. Whereas Liz Truss, who wanted Boris Johnson to stay, has made her economic pitch all about change. And so I think to a great degree, one of the reasons why the Conservative Party membership looks to be leaning more towards Liz Truss right now is that they want to see a change in economic policy, a shift from the way things have been managed over the last 2 years. It's a popular line that Liz Truss often rolls out at these hustings and debates and interviews, that we have the highest tax burden in 70 years. And that's something that instinctively Conservatives find deeply uncomfortable and instinctively can see why that might be damaging our economic situation.
What do you think the Labour Party makes of the candidates? In the sense, it just struck me when you were talking before that when you look back to 2008 onwards, and we had austerity from 2010, Labour were very against austerity. They said we can spend our way out of this. Isn't that what Liz Truss is proposing?
Well, it's interesting. There's a very different proposal from Rishi Sunak versus George Osborne. Yes, both of them are austerity. Both of them are fiscal consolidation, to use the economic term. But when George Osborne did it, it was 80% spending reduction and 20% tax rises. Now, that was a very clear ideological mission as well as one that was trying to settle international markets. The UK had more debt than other comparable countries. And so in terms of keeping our credit rating sound, avoiding a sovereign debt crisis, avoiding entering the position of Greece, for example, that was a big signal that needed to be sent, but also there was the argument that the state had got a bit bloated. Now we're in a position where lots of countries around the world, lots of comparable countries have the same or a greater degree of debt. So differentiating ourselves with that fiscal consolidation arguably is less important for international markets on a comparative basis. But the other argument is that the state has been trimmed to a large degree over the last decade, there isn't that much more room or that much appetite to cut the public sector. So Rishi Sunak's plan is to do all of that fiscal consolidation by raising taxes rather than cutting spending. So it's a bit of a different prospectus there. Similarly, the Labour Party back in the early part of the last decade was saying that it wanted to avoid austerity by spending more. Liz Truss is saying that she wants to avoid that sort of austerity by taking less from individuals. So I think there's a bit of a difference that you can draw there. But on the basic argument of fiscal consolidation versus a more Keynesian-style stimulus, there is a parallel that can be drawn.
Do you know what, Tom? You are very bright. So
He
throwing that
very
at you and then you come out with all of that. Honestly, he's good, ladies and gents. He's young, but by heck, he's good. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you in a little bit. Look, he's blushing
now.
Yeah,
I'm blushing.
Take a bow, Tom. Take a bow.
Gosh, it's high praise indeed.
No, it's. Do you know what? It's hugely impressive, and that's the sort of analysis you need. Brilliant stuff. Love it. It is 12 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines this morning.
A decision on whether Archie Battersby can be moved from hospital to a hospice is expected at the High Court this morning. The 12-year-old's family have pledged to fight to the end so he can spend his final moments with dignity. Archie has been in a coma since April and has been the subject of a lengthy legal battle to continue his life support.
The US has postponed the long-planned test of an intercontinental ballistic missile in the hope of diffusing tensions with China. Beijing has launched a number of missiles into waters near Taiwan in response to Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. She went there. They've said the US is playing with fire. The government is staging its largest military exercise ever in the region.
Electricity was stolen a record number of times last year as people tried to keep their lights on amid a growing energy crisis. Tampering with a line or bypassing a meter can cause serious injury or lead to up to 5 years in prison. Home Office figures show England and Wales police received more than 3,500 reports in the year up to March. That's up 13% on the year before. I've had a nice tweet.
Oh, have you? Go on.
Yeah. This is from Mike Kennelly. He has just tweeted and said, it has to be said, nothing quite brightens the start to a day than when you two are on GB News. We're up early as we're off to our youngest son's wedding, the soon-to-be Mr. Tom and Mrs. Ellen Kennelly. Could you and Stephen please wish them well for us?
Yeah, have a wonderful day.
Well, Tom and Ellen, congratulations.
Yeah.
And we wish you a very happy wedding day. And Mick Kennelly, not Mike Kennelly, Mick Kennelly, you must be very proud. So thank you very much for your tweet.
Oh, you know, just enjoy every moment of it. Flies by. And actually, there's something else that's nice. Rogers, because we said get in touch with something that's going to make us smile. Roger, you're doing that. Next weekend, he says, Whitby in North Yorkshire will be holding our annual regatta. All kinds of activities on and around the water, including the RNLI historic rowing lifeboat, the William Riley, being displayed and rowed through the harbour and out to sea to aid the escort of the annual swimming race from Whitby to Sands End and back. Fabulous. I bet that's going to be a great day. Yeah, if you're in Whitby, that's really something to look forward to next weekend.
Great part of the world as well, Whitby. Good fish and chips.
Whitby, isn't that something to do with Dracula?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, there is. There's some Whitby's got a bit of a sort of Dracula thing. It's meant to go there at some point.
Oh, well,
all that sort of spooky stuff around Whitby.
But do let us know what you're up to at the weekend. We are trying to have some smiles and some sunshine in this show as well today, because there is lots of depressing news around. So gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do let us know what you're up to this weekend. Maybe one of you are getting married. Do let us know. We will share in your joy, because we need it right now, don't we?
Yes, we will share in your joy. Whitby Abbey. Went to Whitby, but I did go to Whitby Abbey, but I was only about 3. I've got some very old, sort of grainy photographs of me at Whitby Abbey.
Oh,
I was unbelievably cute, Ellie.
I bet you were. You're still very cute, Stephen. You're lovely. You're getting all the compliments on
Got to
how
blow
smart
my
you
own
look
trumpet,
today.
nobody else will. There you go. Lovely. Now, back to the serious stuff, should we? Because Ofgem yesterday announced that the energy price cap, yes, that one, instead of being updated and then pushed up twice a year, they're going to do it 4 times a year instead. Oh, joy. The energy regulator also warned customers to expect a very challenging winter ahead.
Well, fuel poverty campaigners are attacking the decision, and they say this move may drive up UK household bills to over £4,000. Well, this comes as the Bank of England warns of a recession lasting from this winter to 2024. It's not looking good, is it? Well, Will Hodgson is the consumer champion of How to Save It, and he's with us now. Will, very good to have you with us in the studio. Thank you for joining us. So tell us about this move then. So we're hearing about the energy price cap rising every 3 months now instead of every 6 months, but it's not necessarily going to be good news, is it?
Most likely it'll be bad news. But there's always going to be a tension between having a market which changes regularly, rapidly from day to day and week to week, and a price which is fixed for 6 months at a time. And that's the problem I think Ofgem are trying to solve. So on the one hand, what you've got is a price cap that might be, believe it or not, and I can't quite imagine saying these words, but it could be too low. We've had energy companies go bust, almost 30 in the last year, because when the prices they had to pay for their energy went up, they couldn't actually get the price cap any higher, so they went out of business. Now, in theory, Ofgem stops that happening. And you might say, well, that's their problem, not our problem. It's the energy companies who are going bust. But in fact, when they go bust, they leave a massive bill for the taxpayer to pick up, £3 billion. So Ofgem allowing them to have a price cap slightly higher because it fits, in theory, prevents that from happening. Now, if you want some sunshine and smiles, it might be fanciful, there is a flip side to this coin. It could be the case that the energy cap, the price cap, is too high. Could you imagine that we see actually gas prices plummet in the next few months? We're stuck with a price cap that imagine them to soar. It would cause a huge hoo-ha. Now, if there's a 3-month price cap, you've got a chance to bring it down quicker. But that might be wishful thinking.
Why, though, would that be the case? Because it's a price cap, not a price fix. So presumably if the prices plummeted, they could reflect that pretty quickly, couldn't they?
You're absolutely right that I've seen price caps go only one way. But in theory, if they come down, it leaves some space for different suppliers to compete and the switching market to come back to life.
Ofgem is meant to be working in our... Well, maybe this is wrong, but I perceive Ofgem as being there to sort of represent the people, if you like, to protect the customer. It doesn't seem to be doing that at the moment. That's not how it seems to be operating.
Stephen, look, having worked in energy for almost a decade, I've lost a good many long afternoons in Whitehall witnessing conversations between government, regulators, Ofgem, and energy companies. And I've got to say, I've been horrified by the amount of self-serving nonsense I've heard offered up by energy companies, and only more horrified by the fact that often by regulators, it's just swallowed whole and taken at face value. Now, that's the worry. I think as a consumer champion, don't lament the battle lost, the fact we've now got a price cap that's going to go up every 3 months. Look to the battle ahead. We need to get into this process, understand how the price cap is set, because there are arguments that can be made on consumers' behalf that there's less risk in the market now, and therefore there's less of an argument for energy companies to say we need a high price cap. Best illustration is we've already had so many energy companies exit the market. So if Ofgem is saying we've got to protect these energy companies from going bust, that's shutting the door after the horse has bolted. That problem's already cleared itself up. I think we've had a Darwinian winnowing out of the market. We've had the survival of the fittest or the fattest energy companies. They don't need as much protection anymore.
Yeah, Richard says, considering the energy companies are known to have regularly overestimated monthly payments, it's going to be interesting to see if the current increases they're imposing are more than is required, leading to customers having massive credit balances. Fair point. I suppose the advantage to that is if you get online, you can alter what you're... If you do direct debit, you can reduce it.
Yeah.
Can't you? But it does leave you then potentially with a huge bill later on.
And this is an important point, Stephen. There's a difference between what you owe to an energy company and how much money they've got. I might actually owe them £100 of energy per month, but they could be taking a direct debit of £200. So I've racked up a credit balance of £600 over 6 months. I would encourage everyone to check what their credit balance is for their energy company and know it is their right to have a conversation about getting it back.
Right.
Well, that's worth knowing, isn't it? Because every little helps
knowing.
at the moment. Just a quick one, Will. Just in terms of this winter that's coming up, with the 3-month rule now that's coming into place, is that not going to hit people a lot harder and a lot quicker with a winter that is already going to be very, very tough. I mean, whilst prices remain high, they're not coming down anytime soon. They're going to be paying more quicker.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what we were looking at is an inevitable rise in the price cap for October to about £3,400. We were all resigned to the fact that in April it was going to go up to maybe closer to 4,000. Now what's going to happen now is that price rise is going to happen in January, precisely the time when your energy use is increasing. It's cold, it's miserable, it's bleak, and that is a lot worse from every angle than it going up in April. Bad enough, but at least you're using less energy then.
It's a little bit warmer at least, isn't it?
Which is that, and just a final point, and I know we mentioned this last time, but for those, there could be plenty of people who are turning their energy off as much as possible over winter, which is not good news, but say, well, I'm using next to nothing, price is still going to go up because, as Lee says, morning Lee, the energy cost has gone up wildly because of the standing charge, which is a con. So even if you were using nothing, your prices are going up.
Again, exactly, it's that same problem. The one thing that you have in your control, when you can't change between different suppliers, all you can do to reduce your energy bill is reduce your energy usage. Now, what incentivises that is having a standing charge, which you pay every day no matter what, which is low, and the charge you can control, which is higher, is the one which goes per unit. So I agree, that's a mistake. We need to get it sorted out.
OK. Will, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Will. And it is a real worry for so many people. John's been in touch. He says it is worrying being a pensioner at the moment, especially with the cost of gas and electric. Something has to give sooner or later.
Anyway, look, don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking more money worries, I'm afraid. What does the interest rate hike, 0.5% yesterday, what's it going to mean for your mortgage? Find out in a couple of minutes.
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most, and again there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Morning to you, it's 8:27. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Emily.
Still to come, Joanna Williams and James Bodworth will join us to take a look at the newspapers. That's in about 10 minutes.
And join me for On Your Doorstep, where I'm out and about in Fowey, in the south of Cornwall, and it's beautiful.
Really, isn't it? We'll talk to Jeff Moody just before 9 o'clock. Now, as the UK economy faces its longest recession, Conservative leadership hopefuls Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed last night over the economic policies to tackle the forecasted downturn.
Well, they'll be back on the road today as they've got a Conservative Party hustings in Eastbourne this evening. Well, let's speak now to Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng. He is backing Liz Truss to become Prime Minister. Good morning to you, Mr. Kwarteng.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, can I have your reaction to that debate last night? What did you make of Ms. Truss's performance?
I think she did well, and I think she gave a very good account of herself. I also think that Rishi did well as well. I think they're performing at a high standard, definitely.
Yes, so it did seem as though the audience was on the side of Mr. Sunak last night. I don't know if you managed to catch at the end. There was a vote in the room of who they would vote for. 2/3 were on the side of Mr. Sunak by the end of that debate. How do you react to that?
Well, look, I think Rishi performed well. I just don't buy his message. I don't think more of the same economically makes any sense. Liz was talking about the possibility of a recession, which isn't inevitable, but she talked about a recession in the first debate, which has been caused, as Rishi said, by inflation. But to deal with the recession by increasing people's taxes is not a very sensible thing to do, and I think Liz is right about that. Now, I think that as time goes on, her message is resonating, certainly with our members, that you can't deal with a recession by putting up people's taxes. You can't tax your way to growth.
But of course, make sure you get your earpiece back in. His argument, Mr. Kwarteng, is that reducing taxes would make the situation worse because, and I'm quoting him here, if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us are going to end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions.
So look, I think this is completely wrong. The corporation tax that Liz is saying should stay at 19%. Keeping it at 19% is not inflationary. What Rishi's doing is trying to increase taxes when they're already at a 70-year high. Since 1949, we have not had the tax burden that we have today as a proportion of our economy. And to increase that when you're facing a recession is exactly the wrong policy. I also think that a lot of these tax rates, and people don't say this, they were set last year. The corporation tax rate was set 2 years before it was due to happen in 2021. The national insurance rate was set in train at the end of last year, when the inflation situation was very different. Now, what Rishi's done is essentially doubled down. Even though the facts have changed, even though the prospect of recession is more acute, he's simply carrying on with the same policy that he enunciated at the end of last year. That cannot be right. We've got to change something in this economy. We've got to create incentives. And that's where I think Liz is on a much stronger ground. And you don't need me to say this. I mean, Rishi himself started off saying that he was a grown-up and tax cuts were fairy tales. And then only 10 days ago, he offered tax cuts. He said he was going to reduce VAT on energy bills, which was exactly the argument. He fought that argument when he was Chancellor, and he's had to pivot on tax. So even Rishi accepts that the current path we're on is not going to get us to a good place.
Mr. Kwarteng, there has been some criticism that Liz Truss is pulling policies out of her hat at this stage to get ahead in the race. She said she's going to unleash investment, boost economic growth, take full advantage of Brexit. She was a Remainer, now she's not. Wanted to cut civil servants' pay in the regions. Now she says she didn't say that. How much is she saying just to appeal to Conservative Party members at the moment? And can she actually see these policies through in the economic climate that we're now in?
The person who's coming up with lots of policies on all sorts of things is Rishi Sunak. He said, he's going to be a hawk on China, even though he was pursuing Chinese deals when he was Chancellor. He said that he wouldn't cut taxes, and then he pivoted and said he's going to reduce taxes and reduce VAT on energy bills. He's been flip-flopping all over the place to try and get attention. That's his right. It's a very keenly fought contest, and people will say lots of things to try and attract votes. I think Liz has been perfectly consistent. She's always said that increasing taxes when you've got recession ahead of you doesn't make any sense. And I'm glad to see that I think Rishi has now realised that. He even said yesterday that he would make an intervention. So even he is saying that there has to be some support for people in a very difficult winter. And that support isn't going to come from taxes. He's not going to simply just take more of people's income and give it back to them. He's got to try and have a looser approach, and that's what he's pretty much signalled.
We know divided parties don't win general elections. There's a huge amount of work to be done come September for whoever is in number 10 on the economic front, the cost of living front. That's going to be absolutely enormous.
Absolutely.
Can you unite the party as well to make it in a position that it could stand a chance at the next general election?
I think we can. I mean, look what's happened in the last week with Liz Truss. She is the unity candidate. We've got Ben Wallace backing her. We've got Tom Tugendhat backing her. We've got Penny Mordaunt, Nadeem Zahawi, Sajid Javid even. Sajid Javid was, as you know, Rishi's immediate predecessor. All of them in the last week have said that they're endorsing Liz. They think her plan is a sensible plan. As Sajid said, we can't simply sleepwalk our way into a high-tax, low-growth economy. Sajid is absolutely right, and the fact that she's drawn all these people together only in the last week suggests to me that she is best placed to unite the party.
Mr. Kwarteng, what about you? Let's say that things go your way and Liz Truss gets the keys to number 10 and you're in Liz Truss's cabinet. What do you fancy as your new position? Would you like to stay as Business Secretary, or would you be vying for another cabinet position?
I love my job, and it's up to Liz or whoever the Prime Minister will be to form a cabinet. I love doing what I do in the business department. I think it's really important that whoever comes in, whoever is the Chancellor, has an emergency budget, deals very immediately with the problems that we're facing. And the outlook this year is very different even to what it was 6 months ago. And that's why sticking to the same high tax, high spend agenda isn't going to help us, and that's why we need a fresh approach, and that's why I'm supporting Liz Truss, as are many of my cabinet colleagues. As I said, in the last week, she's had an enormous number of endorsements from very senior people within the current government, and I think that's a good thing.
It's always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Wow, very interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, I'd love to know what you think about all of that. Every time you hear someone who's so passionate about it, as Kwasi is, it's quite convincing. They make very convincing arguments. Do you find yourself being torn one way or the other? you know, when you listen to these people, or are you absolutely set in stone with who you think would be better in number 10? Or perhaps you think none of the above.
Yeah,
perhaps you think it's time for a change of government. I don't know.
Yeah.
GBviews at gbnews.uk. We've got lots more still to come for you. We'll take you through the papers in a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
8:38 morning to you. I love the fact so many of you getting in touch on a whole host of different issues. I've picked some hosepipe ban ones. Mohammed, morning Mohammed. I mean, isn't this just typical? I emailed my water company, SES, to find out if there is a hosepipe ban in Sutton, which is in Surrey. An automatic reply said it would 10 days for me to get a response. How ridiculous. I still do not know. Yeah, I don't think SES is, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But I know it's 10 days for a reply. Ridiculous, isn't it?
Not good, is it? Mark in Surrey says water companies ping a hosepipe ban when they see fit, but don't ever reduce the bills where we can't use the water that we have all paid for. And yet they are hopeless at fixing leaks and issues in the water system. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people. It's the hypocrisy of it all. And, you know, you're paying very good money for your water bills and then you can't use it.
Brett says, I remember the hosepipe bans in the 80s. Very surprised they haven't invested and prepared for this, and it's happened again. Pamela says the water companies want to fine people £1,000 for breaking the hosepipe ban. What fine is put on the water companies for leaks and the failure to stop the leaks? Ofwat probably have some sort of fine system in place. But if it probably, I don't know for sure, again, don't quote me on it, but if they do, it's not making enough of a difference if we're losing 1.4 billion litres of water a day across the whole country. Crackers.
And we do want to know, would you grass up a neighbour if you are living in Hampshire or the Isle of Wight and you're under this hosepipe ban? Now, if you were seeing your neighbours watering their garden in the middle of the night, would you let Southern Water know? They could be fined up to £1,000. Very interested in that. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We haven't had any of those so far. I think everyone's a lovely neighbour.
Yeah, everyone's a lovely neighbour. Just a quick one from Trevor. He says, I'm just going to put 4 watering cans out in the garden and keep filling them with our hosepipe. I would imagine that will be allowed. Ooh, I don't know, Trevor. I don't know.
Rebellious emails.
If you filled them from the kitchen tap, you might get away with it. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably end up having to go to court or something over that one and arguing it out. I just don't know.
Well, do let us know. We do like to hear from you. Mandy's been on touch on Twitter, because you can also get in touch on Twitter at GBNews. She says, another brilliant breakfast show. Stephen, it was bang on the money, talking about Tom Harwood earlier. Ellie's a breath of fresh air. That's very nice, thank you. Only thing that would have made the show better if you had Liz Kershaw doing the papers, Mandy. Well, I can tell you we have got 2 people doing the papers, and they're doing a fantastic job this morning. Where's my list?
It's Joanna Williams and James Bloodworth.
I'll share your one. Sorry, I hadn't actually read that.
I can only apologise for Miss Costello this morning.
I'm only reading what Mandy said. But no, you two are doing a fantastic job, and I'm sure lots of people will be in touch saying that as well. Dig myself out of this hole. Joanna, should we start with you?
I can't believe she did that. Anyway, I think you're fabulous, Joanna. Let's have a look at the Mail. It's a really important story, actually, because it's what they call a chemical kosh.
Yeah, it's a very sad story and as you say, a very, very serious story. This is about people, residents in care homes, particularly people with dementia, who had their medication essentially increased massively over the course of lockdown, when visitors weren't allowed in care homes. And it just seems like, you know, we're having more of the horrible consequences of lockdown coming to light, and people in care homes seem to be suffering most of all. I mean, right the way through from being discharged out of hospitals right at the beginning without being properly tested, the virus being spread in care homes. And now we hear that during that time there was a big increase in the number of people being prescribed antipsychotic medication, people with dementia. And the side effects of this are very serious. It's an increase in stroke, decline in the condition of the dementia that they're suffering from originally, and can also ultimately lead to a premature death. And you know, this is a really serious thing.
But the trouble is, it's one of those issues where you need to dig deep, actually, isn't it? And there may be an argument to say that perhaps this needed to be done because people were getting very anxious, very stressed because they weren't seeing relatives and things. So the one presumes there's got to have been a good medical reason for doing it, but even so, it's still disturbing.
Well, we'd hope so, and I suspect what you're saying there, Stephen, is absolutely right. You know, that people were in a very heightened and distressed state because of the changes in their circumstances. But then I think it's important that we ask, was that change, was it absolutely necessary? Is there any way that could have been mitigated? I mean, clearly, I'm not going to pretend that the spread of COVID in care homes wasn't a very serious matter. That absolutely needed to be taken seriously, and measures clearly did need to be put in place. But I do just wonder if there was any way that it could have been for a shorter period of time, or, you know, more. Eventually, we let people meet relatives outside, didn't we? And there were various things like that, whether things like that could have perhaps be done sooner. I guess the important thing for me is obviously we can't rewind time and change things that have already happened, but can we make sure that we're learning the right lessons in case, heaven forbid, we're ever in this situation again?
Isn't it so interesting how we are still unpicking the impact of those lockdowns for the best part of 2 years, seeing the impact on the economy. Now we're hearing about, you know, how it's affected our elderly residents in care homes. And James, that your next story kind of relates to the lockdowns and coronavirus, long COVID, more common in the unemployed. This is a story in the Times.
Yeah, so it's in the kind of economically inactive, there's a higher prevalence of long COVID. And I mean, in one way, this seems sort of inevitable, in that the long-term unemployed, it tends to be health issues they have already, and people with long-term health issues are more susceptible to the lingering effects of COVID after you've had the virus. That said, I mean, I've had COVID myself twice, and both times I had it afterwards, I had these night sweats which went on for about 3 months, and that's considered a form of long COVID. So it is quite common, but it tends to hit people who are already unhealthy more. And one of the reasons Britain had there was such a big impact of COVID here is because life expectancy in Britain is already the worst among the worst in Europe.
Is it really?
And there's obesity, hypertension, chronic respiratory conditions, and excess alcohol use are quite widespread in Britain compared to other European countries. We are quite an unhealthy nation, and that means there will be more of a long-term impact from long COVID as well, it seems, unfortunately.
Part of the problem is with this, though, is what is long COVID?
Yeah.
I mean, the minute anyone, and I'm not being unsympathetic, but the minute anyone sort of had COVID and then they feel fatigued for a number of weeks. It's long COVID. It's long
Yeah.
COVID. And I don't know if that's clinically correct or not.
No, I think so. So the fact I had these like night sweats, it doesn't affect my day-to-day life really. It's an inconvenience. That would actually be classed as long COVID. But then you have other people who have more debilitating conditions where they can't get out. They're bedridden essentially.
Yeah.
Which I would say, yeah, that's long COVID.
Yeah.
Such a broad umbrella, isn't it?
It is. Oh dear. In the mirror, Joanna. Prince. I've reached a point when it comes to talking about Prince Harry's stories. I'd almost just sort of like to go, let's no more.
No,
more.
I would.
Because I don't like seeing a family disintegrate. I really don't like it. But I also just wish they'd stop.
No.
Just stop, take a step back, disappear for 12 months. Let it calm down.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is the second lawsuit Harry is bringing over this issue of his security and in the UK and whether he should be given police protection or not and whether he offered to pay for it or not and whether that was the right thing to do. I mean, just a couple of things that stand out to me about this story. I mean, one is just the sheer cost. I mean, all morning we've been talking about the cost of living crisis, spiralling inflation, etc. I mean, these legal actions that he's bringing are £100,000 at least a pop, and the people who, I guess, are rubbing their hands in glee over this are the lawyers who are raking in the money. And they're not going to be telling him, look, just stop, Harry. They're going to be, please carry on. And you wonder where all the money is coming from to fund these lawsuits. But also, it wears you down. It absolutely grinds you down. And it just seems almost as if it is kind of just constantly keeping his name in the papers. And the other thing we know is when he went over to the US, it was supposed to be about privacy. And you think just.
But I think that's what so many people find so hypocritical and so confusing, really, about this situation. He stepped down as a senior royal. He wants privacy. He doesn't live here anymore. No. He lives in Santa Barbara, I believe. But you still want police protection. You still want all those rights when you decide to come home.
Absolutely. And his big contention here seems to be over the fact that he offered to pay for it. But I think he forgets that for kind of normal people, as mere mortals, the police is not a private security service that you can flash your money around and kind of click your fingers and have come and act on your behalf. No matter how rich you are, you can't employ the police in your capacity as a private citizen, which is what Harry now is.
Yeah. Oh, just stop it, Harry. Stop it. Also in the mirror, there's going to be a strike of Amazon workers, which actually, see, this is interesting though, isn't it, James? In that this could affect us much more than, say, the rail strikes or even the postal strikes.
Yeah, and it's funny when we're talking about what I would call the entitlement of Prince Harry, who wants taxpayer-funded protection when he comes to the UK. And then you've got Amazon workers, who I would say are much more important to most of our lives and the economy in this country, who have been given a 35p, a derisory, I would say, 35p pay rise and are planning to strike. I mean, Amazon is the biggest multinational company in the world. It's headed by the richest man in the world. And, I've been undercover at an Amazon warehouse in 2016, and I saw a situation where workers were they were given disciplinaries if they spent too long in the toilet. You were given disciplinaries for taking sick days. And 35p, it seems more insulting than not receiving any pay.
35p a what? An hour?
An hour, yeah.
An hour.
That seems more insulting than just not giving anyone a pay rise at all when inflation's so high at the moment.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. If you're working in Amazon warehouse or anything for Amazon, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk and keep it confidential. I mean, I don't know, because we all rely on Amazon. We frankly rely on Amazon now.
Yes.
I mean, that's the strong position they're in. Just very briefly, just in 30 seconds, Joanna, staycations, no more.
We all want to go abroad. It's called, pent-up demand. People have been forced to have staycations for the past couple of years because of COVID and lockdown, and now we want to make up for lost time with 2 weeks abroad.
Yeah.
Don't blame you. We need the guaranteed weather, don't we? We need the sunshine.
You do.
It's also cheaper to go abroad than to stay at home.
It is.
Very
true.
It
can be.
Yeah.
Joanna, James, it's been a joy. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning. Talking of staycations, though, let's take you down to Fowey for On Your Doorstep.
Well, our South West reporter Jeff Moody is in the port town of Fowey in South Cornwall. Jeff, good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I'm at the Royal Fowey Yacht Club no less. Have a look at that view before we go any further. Just incredible, isn't it? It's no wonder that so many artists live in Fowey and are inspired by that view. But I've come here to the Yacht Club to meet an artist that is inspired by that view. She's inspired every day by the view. But she doesn't paint the view. She paints something completely different. Katrina, you're painting Chinese brush art. What is it about that view that makes you paint this?
The Chinese brush painting requires you to be really centred and calm. And what could be more centering and calming than a view like that?
So you use the view to inspire you and to get your creative juices flowing, if you like, yes, and then you create what you want to create.
Correct. And I can paint sea, I can paint mountains, but it's not a copy of what's out there.
What is Chinese brush art?
Chinese brush painting is all about the materials that you use, the brushes, bamboo, animal hair, the paper, the ink. It's also different to Western art.
Where does the water pistol fit in?
Seagulls.
Right, okay.
We are in Cornwall on the riverside.
So give us an example of some Chinese brush art.
Okay, so something very simple like bamboo, perhaps. So we just touch and lift as we go, and yeah, maybe that's starting to look like a bamboo, but it's the little touches that make it. So here's the knot, more like a bamboo.
It's a piece of bamboo.
And then you have the leaf.
Now you had your own studio here, didn't you? But you decided to give it up. Why did you give it up?
It was two things really. One is I couldn't really teach there because it wasn't big enough, and this is what I love to do. And the other thing was wanted to see if there was a different way of being an artist and sharing your art. So chance conversation with a friend of mine, Wendy Rolt, we decided to try and create something different. And so we created the Kerno Art Collective, which is a collection of artists, about 12 of us now. And as with any artist, you paint what you love, but then oftentimes you paint what you know you can sell. And these two may be very, very different.
So that's your seascapes, things like that, the souvenirs of Fowey.
Yes, so we wanted to give them space, give them permission to do what they wanted to do. So in conjunction with Connacht Estate near Lostwithiel, we took over their stable yard and we got all these artists together to bring in what they loved to do. And it was a fantastic success. And we've been asked to do it again. So we're all meeting in September to plan the next year. And that is just so, so lovely. And, you know, being an artist is lonely, often. But now we have a group.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to have a little go, actually. I quite like Chinese calligraphy. I know a few Chinese characters. Okay. So do you mind if I have a little go?
Oh, please do.
I'm going to try the character Wo, which means I, me. So it's like that. Big strokes with the brush down like that, then a big one like that. Whoa, how's that?
Wow, you're a natural. That's lovely.
Well, I'm going to just carry on and try with a few more Chinese characters, but while I'm doing that, you don't want to watch me. Have a look at that view. Just spectacular.
Lovely stuff. Jeff, thank you very much indeed. Jeff worked in China, so
Did
he
he?
knows characters, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It is absolutely beautiful in Fowey in Cornwall. If any of you live there, please do send pictures. We absolutely love it. And Katrina's voice, there, was just so calming as well.
Very
I think that,
calm.
very calming. We'd like to be doing some painting now, wouldn't we?
Oh, but yeah, I'd
be good.
Yeah. Well, I'd be rubbish at it, but there you go. It looks very relaxing to do. Christine and Alan have been in touch. Morning to you two. So we know you like cats. Oh, yes, very true. So we thought you might like to see a photo of our silver Bengal, a beautiful young lady who is no longer with us. She passed away 2 years ago at the age of 9. Still miss her. I bet you do. Absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, Paul says, my wife says you like squirrels.
I do.
This is what I woke up to this morning here in West Wales.
Oh, what a beauty.
Cheeky little squirrel.
Oh, there's 3 of them.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
family.
wow, that's lovely. And Anne says, we thought you liked cats and thought this might brighten your day. Short-haired Persian called Ziggy belonged to my daughter. He loved getting into cupboards and sitting in shelves. He passed away a few years ago. Oh, Ziggy's beautiful.
Yeah, really beautiful. Thank you so much for sending those in. And do keep them coming. Lots more to come, including all the latest on the Tory Leadership Challenge. Stay with us.
Morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most, and again there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
The man who wants to be the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sits down with me, Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis this Saturday. Don't miss it. Does the former Chancellor have what it takes to beat his rival, Liz Truss? Can he regain the momentum he's lost over the last couple of weeks? All questions and all answers put to the Tory leadership hopeful, Rishi Sunak, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clash over economic policies to tackle the Bank of England's warning over more than a year of recession to come.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Friday the 5th of August. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Ellie.
We are, of course, live across the whole of the UK. We're on your radio, on your TV and online. So whatever you're up to today, you can take us out and about with you.
Well, lucky you, and here's what you're waking up to this morning.
I'm not sitting here or standing here promising you tens and tens of billions of pounds of goodies straight away, because I don't think that's the right thing to do for our economy. I think it's risky. I think it risks making the inflation problem far worse and costing you all far more.
Well, in the Tory leadership campaign, Mr Sunak, who's trailing Liz Truss in polls, has repeatedly said he would prioritise bringing down inflation before cutting taxes if he became Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, Liz Truss has pledged a package of tax cuts worth £30 billion soon after she enters office.
Would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment.
Well, we're going to be talking to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, about this in just a few minutes. Also this morning,
CPI inflation is now expected to peak at just over 13% in Q4 of this year and to remain at very elevated levels throughout much of 2023. GDP growth in the UK has slowed and the economy is now forecast to enter recession later this year.
Well, the Bank of England has warned that the UK is set to fall into the longest recession since the 2008 financial crisis. This follows the announcement that interest rates will rise 0.5% to 1.75%. That's the biggest hike for 27 years.
Well, what do you make of all of this? It's a pretty depressing picture, it has to be said. Who do you have faith in going into number 10 who may be able to change that? It's a big may, to be honest. But let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Yeah, I mean, so many people getting in touch about the cost of living. It is hugely worrying. The thing is, it's often when you have these economic problems, they're hugely concerning for people really at the very lower end of the income spectrum, and that's absolutely understandable. I think what makes this slightly different is that that's creeping up, isn't it, to people who are on maybe considered to be pretty good incomes, maybe even decent incomes in all of this, who are still struggling because of the continuing increases in prices, in dealing with children and all the rest of it. It all just costs an absolute fortune now. What do we do moving forward?
And it really is a tough job for whoever takes on the role of PM. A few of you have been in touch on that Tory leadership debate last night. Kevin says, once again in this leadership race, no mention of help for pensioners like my wife and myself. We are pensioners. We've been massively eroded by low interest rates, high cost of living and the triple lock being removed. And a few pensioners have been in touch this morning saying the same thing.
Yeah, and Rob says, I'm incredulous that Rishi gets praised for the furlough scheme. It was his government that shut down people's businesses and then gave them money we didn't have. This is the cause of the economic crisis we now face. Well, possibly so, but then health of the nation, that was the thing. What do you do? Do you just let people contract what was then a virus without any sort of vaccine? I mean, I know that's a contentious issue in and of itself, but that was what the government was facing at the time. No clear answer to this, which is the problem, because we want answers from the two people who want to be in number 10. The UK is facing its longest recession. They reckon 5 quarters, 15 months of recession on the way. So Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed last night over the economic policies that they were both putting forward to tackle that downturn.
Well, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak took part in Sky News' The Battle for Number 10 last night, which saw them separately taking questions from party members.
Now, the Foreign Secretary argued that recession could be avoided using tax cuts and reversing the national insurance increase. Meanwhile, the former Chancellor said Liz Truss's plan would make the dire economic situation worse. Let's have a look.
I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
I'm worried that Liz Truss's plans will make the situation worse. And what I want to do is different. I think the government's #1 priority should be grappling with inflation. That's what I want to do. But it all starts with not making the situation worse. Because if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us, all of you, are going to just end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions. I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am so focused on gripping inflation first.
Well, for more, let's speak to GB News' political correspondent Tom Harwood, as well as research director at Ipsos, Kieran Pedley. Good morning to you both, and thank you for joining us. Tom, let's start with you. Reaction to the debate last night did seem as though Rishi Sunak was the one that went down well with the audience members last night, at least. Is this an opportunity for him to start to gain back the momentum that's been lost by his team in the past few weeks?
Well, he certainly does need more nights like last night if he is going to turn things around. The trouble for Rishi Sunak is that this is quite late in the day. The ballots have already started going out to Conservative Party members. Many of them will have already voted, although not all of the ballots are going out yet because we had this security concern earlier in the week that really did delay that process. We're expecting them all to have landed through the letterboxes of the membership by the start of next week. But we do expect that Conservative Party members, when they vote early. Last time around, we think that around 80% of those votes came in the first week or so of the votes being able to be put in, which means that in order for Rishi Sunak to turn things around, given the enormous polling deficit he is experiencing right now, he would need something really quite remarkable. He performed well last night, but was it enough to turn the dial? Perhaps not.
Kieran Pedley, what are the polls saying about all of this situation at the moment?
So I guess there's two ways to look at it. On the one hand, when you look at the contest itself between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, it does appear from the membership polling that we have available that Liz Truss is in something of an unassailable lead. But of course, with politics, we should always be careful about any degree of certainty. I've learned that from bitter experience over the years. But I think on the cost of living, I mean, it won't be a surprise to your viewers that is the #1 issue on voters' minds. Concern about rising prices and inflation is at a 40-year high. And I think whoever wins, what the public are looking for is some decisive action to get a grip of that crisis. Now, I suppose what we don't know is what the long-term implications of the new policies might be. Let's say it is Liz Truss. People might welcome that immediate help in tax cuts. But if it does make the situation worse, like Rishi Sunak claims, then, of course, that will be a very short-lived honeymoon.
See, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because that ties into what our viewers and listeners are saying. Sue said Rishi's appealing to the people who can afford the cost of living. Liz reaching out to those who need the help. I guess that's because he's taking a longer-term view rather than looking at immediate help. Robert says we need Liz Truss because she's being bold with her policies. Well, that ties in with your polling, doesn't it?
It does, and again, I can only stress it depends if it works, right? Because I think that one of the things that we find when we ask people what do they want in a Prime Minister, post Boris Johnson, they want honesty. And I think we don't want to relitigate some of those discussions, but that is something that's on people's minds, alongside someone that's in touch with ordinary people and good in a crisis and capable. And to focus on some of those latter points, just to reiterate what I was saying, being in touch is about addressing the public concern there is about the cost of living and dealing with it quickly. But of course, being good in a crisis and being a capable leader is about actually delivering. So, I mean, really this comes down to, yes, in the short term, what help can be out there for people as we face a really difficult winter, but the long term, does it actually work? And I think the final thing I would say as well is don't forget public services in all of this as well, because people are, of course, most concerned of all about the cost of living, but they're also very concerned about the NHS and schools and public services too. And so the new Prime Minister has to deliver on both of those counts. It's one thing to put money in people's pockets. We've also got to make sure that the winter crisis in the NHS, or a crisis that's already here, let's be honest, is dealt with.
Yeah, OK. Look, we're going to leave you two there just for the time being. Thank you very much indeed. In the meantime, we can talk to the former Defence Secretary, Dr Liam Fox, who's joining us now. It's always good to see you. I know you're backing Rishi Sunak in all of this, but it raises some very serious questions, don't they? When you look at what voters actually want, what members of the Conservative Party actually want, and what they're telling us, the majority today, is that they don't want jam tomorrow. They want some radical change now because they're desperate.
Well, it depends what people mean by radical change. I thought the most important intervention in this leadership contest so far was yesterday, Nigel Lawson writing in the Telegraph and saying that what we need is a proper Conservative approach to this, that the approach that's being proposed by Liz Truss, which is let's borrow even more money than we're borrowing at the moment and cut taxes, although it's unclear which taxes, however, and how we're going to fund it. But that was tried, of course, by Ted Heath under Anthony Barber. And the point that Nigel Lawson was making yesterday was that he and Margaret Thatcher vowed that they would never do that again because it produced a big rise in unemployment and a big rise in inflation. If there was a magic solution to the sort of position that we're in today, politicians would have found it. And frankly, when politicians promise me things that sound too good to be true, I believe it's because it's too good to be true.
Promising things, promising that he'll get inflation under control.
Well, that's the main thing, is to get inflation under control.
Yeah, but that sounds too
and
good
the problem
to be
at
true
the
at the
present time, well, we've got inflation under control before, and the thing is to understand what inflation is. Inflation, post-pandemic, is the fact that the global supply, whether that supply is fuel or food, supply has risen too slowly in relation to global demand. And that's what's causing inflation. The chairman of the Federal Reserve last week, when he put up American interest rates, made the point that the Federal Reserve in America is having to dampen down demand by raising interest rates until supply catches up. And his argument, which I think is correct, is that if you allow demand to run away at the present time, you'll actually create more inflation rather than less. I'm afraid you cannot simply defy the laws of economics, however much people might want it to be so.
Dr. Liam Fox, good morning to you. How much do you think this news from the Bank of England yesterday helps or hinders Rishi Sunak's ambitions for PM? It has really split our viewers this morning that are getting in touch. Some saying that Rishi Sunak knows his economics. He's got economic expertise. He obviously brought us the furlough scheme. Others saying that he's been the man in charge of the economy for 2 years and we're in this mess. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, to deal with that second point, I suppose by that argument he's also responsible for inflation in the United States and inflation in the European Union, where the level's about the same as the UK. This is a global crisis, largely a result of the pandemic and as I said, that displacement and imbalance between supply and demand in the global economy, and it's got to be dealt with. It's been worsened by the war in Ukraine and the increase in fuel prices, as the Governor of the Bank of England said yesterday. There's no magic wand for this, and I think that what people are seeing in Rishi Sunak is someone who's willing to tell it to them straight. He's not saying there's an easy way out of this, because there isn't an easy way out of it, and we're going to have to batten down the hatches. And when he's backed not only by Nigel Lawson, Mrs Thatcher's most successful Chancellor, but also William Hague and Michael Howard, previous leaders of the party, I think we need to listen to those voices of experience.
But don't we need to listen to people like Sajid Javid as well? I mean, I know there are questions about his timing in his endorsements for all this, but he was Chancellor of the Exchequer for a good period of time. He said, Rishi Sunak's plans are sleepwalking into a high-tax, low-growth economy. Well, I mean, high taxes are disturbing for a lot of people. Low growth is disturbing for all of us.
Well, you have to get these things in the right sequence. You deal with inflation first, you deal with borrowing, getting borrowing under control. We're already spending £85 billion this year on debt interest. That's twice as much as we're spending on defence in the middle of a crisis of security in Europe. Are people actually suggesting we borrow more money now? Because that money's got to be paid back. That's got to be paid back by future generations. Borrowing is just deferred taxation. Because as Mrs Thatcher used to say, and it's the most true thing to say in politics, governments have no money. There is only taxpayers' money. And if government borrows and spends money today, it's got to be picked up by taxpayers in the future. And I think spending today and leaving that money to future generations is neither economically nor morally correct.
Liam Fox, do you think Rishi Sunak can claw any of this back now? He had a good night last night, most people would agree. When it came to the audience feedback at the end, 2/3 put their hand up saying that they would vote for Rishi Sunak. But Liz Truss is still way out there in front in the polls, 30 points ahead in some polls. Can he gain back any of this momentum that's been lost in the last few weeks, or is it too little too late?
But let me just say about the polls, we've had other polls which have shown a 2-point difference and a 5-point difference. When you've got polls that show a 2-point difference and a 26-point difference, I really start to question the validity of the polls. So that's one thing. Secondly, I've been out and amongst real voters, real Conservative activists for all of the last week. And what I'm seeing is that, A, they're holding back their vote. They're not going to do what a lot of the media said they would, which is cast their vote and then go on holiday. They understand the importance of the task they have. They're going to listen to the candidates. They're going to make up their minds. My guess is that whoever's got momentum in the third week of August is likely to win this contest. Conservative activists understand the importance of their decision, and they're not, I think, going to gamble with the economic future. And I think why you saw that change in momentum last night, why, as you say, it split your voters, is that they understand now the importance. What the Bank of England said yesterday, I think, has been a rather unpleasant reality that's intruded on this leadership contest, but it's brought it into very sharp focus. And I think that the more people see Rishi Sunak, the more that they recognise he's not going to promise them easy solutions to difficult problems, the more his credibility rises. And as we saw last night on the Sky poll, the more that translates into votes.
Liam Fox, good to talk to you. Thank you, appreciate it. Tom Harwood and Kieran Pedley still here. Tom, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's the classic line that I suppose we have been hearing for quite some time, that Rishi Sunak is the capable individual, that he has steered the economic ship and that he's endorsed by some heavyweight figures, all of which are true. But this is the same line that we have been hearing through this contest for the last 3 weeks. And to some extent, it doesn't look like the Conservative base is buying it to the degree that they would need to. Really, I think that what the Conservative base is looking for now is a change in economic policy rather than a continuation from the person who has steered the ship over the last 2 years. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why Liz Truss, who's been able to quite miraculously cast herself as the change candidate, let's not forget she's been in the cabinet for longer than anyone else who stood to be leader. She has, of course, been part of the government that's been making all these decisions for the last almost decade. But she has managed to cast herself as the change candidate, as someone who has been fighting those battles within government and wants to change the course of economic policy, not just of the last couple of years, but of the last 20 years.
Do you think that's the key point from the polling you do, the people you talk to, Kieran, that it is all about change now? People do just want to see a total refresh at the top. I mean, although Liz Truss is Foreign Secretary, when it comes to these sort of matters, the financial matters and the running of the country, it does seem like she is the face of change, despite, as Tom said, the fact she's been in the cabinet longer than anybody else.
Well, I think in some ways the change is happening by the virtue of the fact that Boris Johnson's being replaced. I mean, this is fundamentally, at first, this is a Conservative Party contest, and I think that if there is anything that's going to change the trajectory of it, given the primacy of the economic argument between the two candidates, then it would be something like the Bank of England intervening yesterday. I mean, not deliberately in the contest, but intervening with their projections. That might cause Conservative members to think again. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned here is Boris Johnson. And the impression I get from, not from all Conservative members, but from the polling that we look at, there's a sizable chunk of them that aren't happy with the fact that Boris Johnson was replaced. And they blame Rishi Sunak for that. So whilst the economy is front and centre of everybody's minds, this is still politics. And people that are members of political parties are very engaged in that. And I wonder whether that's something that he can overcome in this contest.
OK. Kieran Pedley, good to see you this morning. Tom, we'll see you at 9:30 for now. Thank you.
Lots more to come, including what's hot and what's not in the showbiz world. That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Oh, let's go all showbiz for you this morning with the ever-glamorous Tiffany Sedgwick. Good morning.
Good morning. Have we got that Friday feeling, guys?
We have a little bit, I think. It's what we need.
Oh, totally.
She's sunshine, this girl.
Sunshine.
We love her.
Let's talk Strictly.
Oh, my gosh. It's like my favourite show, and I'm so happy it's coming back next month. We haven't got a date, but we have 3 contestants who've been announced, celebrity contestants, of course. So first one was announced was Will Mellor, who's in 2 pints of lager and 2 packets of crisps. He said he's totally going to be out of his comfort zone doing Strictly. He says that now, but by the end of it, I'm sure he's going to be a pro. And then for months, people were talking about Kim Marsh, former Coronation Street star, and she's confirmed that she'll be taking part in Strictly. She said she's loved the show for years, and she's excited to put her sequin dress on to get on the dance floor.
Who was she married to? Was she married to an actor donkeys years ago?
Yeah, she's been married to quite a few times.
Don't get into that, Stephen.
And then this morning it was announced Richie Anderson is also going to be taking part. He's a Radio 2 presenter. So it'll be interesting to see how he does on the dance floor. I follow him on Instagram and he seems he's got the right moves. But obviously with Strictly, it's all about technicality.
I can't believe it's that time of year again. It's coming around so quickly, but I can't wait.
Summer's come to an end, autumn's on its way.
It's my idea of hell.
No,
I
they're coming for you.
Pay good money to see you on
Ellie,
Strictly.
you would be fabulous on Strictly.
I'd love
sequin
Strictly.
dresses,
Yeah, the makeup, the outfit.
Oh, yeah, you'd love it, just for the glamour.
Dancing,
Just for the
I'd
glamour.
be up for that. I'd be up for that.
Now, Batgirl. I can't quite believe this, that they've Warner Brothers have spent 70 million quid on making a movie, and then they just pull it.
I just don't understand, because women have been making great strides in the comic world. You know, we had Black Widow, we have Wonder Woman, and they've spent 7 months filming this in Scotland. And this week it was just announced that they're shelving it altogether, so no one is going to see that film. It's not going to see the light of day.
It's gone through post-production.
Yeah, and you know what? I was really excited because it was going to have Michael Keaton doing an appearance back as Batman, J.K. Simmons, Leslie Graham. She would have been the first Latino as Batgirl, so it's quite disappointing.
What happened, Steph? So it just didn't do well in test screenings?
Yeah,
Is that what happened?
so they showed some test screenings of it, and apparently it wasn't that great. It didn't blow people away, because, you know, with most of these Hollywood blockbusters, they want to get their money back because they spent so much, but I think this has just been a waste of money altogether. Like $70+ million gone down the drain for a film that I think lots of girls would have loved to see, and boys as well.
But
it seems like a waste.
Even if it didn't make a profit, it's still claiming clawing some of the money back.
Yeah, and it's quite controversial, because I'm like, with all those big names, you're telling me they didn't put a good performance on. They could have just revamped it again.
Yeah, it's such a waste of the residents as well. Like you said, they've been filming for 7 months. So much disruption to all of them.
Such a waste of
I
money.
feel so sorry for Leslie Grace.
Same here.
Because, I mean, she must have thought, I've got this huge role.
Totally.
And then nothing.
It's really embarrassing as well, and such a shame, because then people think, is it her acting credentials that is not good? But I think she'd probably done her part
Just time to squeeze in Chrissy Teigen in 30
Yeah,
seconds.
so 2 years ago she had suffered that devastating miscarriage, but this week she announced she is pregnant and expecting a baby, and she says that it's the best news ever for her and John Legend. So
really
congrats
happy
to
news.
them.
Yeah, they've been so open about their infertility
Yeah.
issues, haven't they? So really happy news for them to end our morning. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. We'll
No
see you
worries.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Lots more Showbiz tomorrow. That is it from us. Do join us tomorrow morning from 6 o'clock. But up next, Tom Harwood's got the briefing.
Morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today, again, sunny spells for most, and again there'll be some showers, but mostly across the north. The south remaining dry, not just today, but for the long term as well, as this area of high pressure will be slowly but surely moving in. It's going to bring most of us a fine and sunny weekend. But as I said, it does also mean not much in the way of rainfall across the south. Fine start here. A little fresher than recent mornings. There are some showers across western Scotland, northwest England. And we'll see a few more of those through the day, becoming a bit more widespread over northern England. So a scattering of showers here and across central and eastern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, the showers clearing from the west of Scotland. So generally here, sunny spells, and not too many this afternoon for Northern Ireland. In the south, much less humid than earlier in the week, but still quite warm by this afternoon, 24, 25. Quite a cool day, though, further north, with temperatures mostly only in the high teens. And still a few showers around this evening over northeast England, eastern Scotland. They do tend to fade away, though, fairly quickly. So for most, it's a fine Friday night with clear skies and light winds. It will actually be quite a chilly night. So we're going to start the weekend in single figures in many towns and cities. So a cool but sunny start to Saturday for England and Wales. Further north, we will have more cloud moving in, quite a grey start for Northern Ireland and quite a damp start for a good part of Scotland. We'll see the patchy rain working its way through the central belt and into the east before fizzling out, but northern Scotland always keeping rain and drizzle on and off during tomorrow. Elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. A bit more cloud over northern England, but further south, sunny spells and temperatures just on the rise after that cool start. Will be up more widely in the south into the mid-20s. Further north, high teens, low 20s possible. Sunday, again, some patchy rain across the far north, but otherwise most places dry with sunny spells and signs of things warming up further into next week.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in